Roll call.
Board Member Kepler,
Here.
Board Member Roth,
Present.
Board Member Potash,
Here.
Board Member Lamb.
Here.
Everyone's here. I'd also like to say that Brent Schultz and Juliana Cherry are present.
Great. Nomination and election of review board chair and vice chair. The nominations.
I'd like to nominate Dan Potash to be the chair.
Second that. Call for vote.
Oh, call for a vote, I'm sorry. So vote for Dan Potash to be the chair, and I'm sorry, who to be the co-chair?
Please.
Okay.
Whatever one and done.
All right, so voting for Dan Potash to be the chair, Kepler,
Yes, aye.
Board Member Roth,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb,
Aye.
Board Member Potash.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Nomination for vice chair.
I'll nominate Deirdre Glenn to be vice chair.
Second that.
All right, so vote Board Member Kepler for Deirdre Lamb to be the vice chair.
Aye.
Board Member Roth,
Aye.
Board Member Potash,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb.
Aye.
So the slate is that Dan Potash will be the chair and Deirdre Lamb the vice chair.
Okay, determination of legal notice. Juliana, was everything done according to?
Yes, everything was noticed properly. The item tonight is a continued item, so the notice occurred at the previous meeting.
Okay. Approval of minutes, we have none.
Then
Do we have
minutes
a
are not.
prediction of when we're going to have them?
I'm being told by my boss they'll be ready for the next meeting.
All of them? Or just?
My boss is telling me to have the meeting minutes next meeting, so.
I guess my question is, are they going to, just the most recent ones?
I think it most likely will be just the most recent ones, because at the last meeting, staff explained that the ones from last year we're going to send out to a service to have them done.
I see. Okay, correspondence. Have we received any?
I don't have any correspondence.
We did receive one nomination after the meeting notice was published, but since we did an amended notice, we included that on the agenda. And that was through correspondence that that nomination was received.
Okay,
Part of a question,
go ahead.
if you didn't receive communication, there's a chair missing. Was there some sort of a communication between the previous chair and the board as to why there's a previous chair missing?
Are you talking about John's resignation?
Yes. I mean, if it was done with communication, he's not just absent without leave.
I didn't think of it as correspondence, I'm sorry.
We got a resignation from a former chair member as we were preparing the budget, and, you know, we didn't put it on the agenda. I didn't know that it needed to be agendized.
No discussion needs to be occurred.
Okay.
I would like to thank him for being the chair for a while.
I would like to thank him for the bravery he showed in identifying all of the issues that are wrong with this current support of the board by Building and Planning. I would like to have been able to do that in person.
If I may suggest, maybe we'd like to move to public expression so people could express things, and then we could have item 5, report from the chair, follow public expression.
Okay, since there was no chair, well, I'm sorry.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
Since we have an applicant here who has an agendized item, can you take that in advance and then take a comment afterwards? So we're not putting the applicant behind everything?
We have to do everything.
Well, we sometimes do that when we have a lot going on before but I'm hoping we can expedite. So, no, all we're talking about is
This is the
public
way we always do
expression,
it.
and the items that are going to take time are later in the meeting, after the public hearing.
Chairman Potash, if I could, I think that was a good point. Brent Schultz, Planning Director, is it, there's public expression here that's been stated tonight. Let them talk at public expression time.
Right.
And so you can go through your agenda in an efficient way,
Right,
meeting rules of order.
right. Okay, report from the chair. We had no chair during the time that this was agendized, so.
However, I would like to bring up the podium perhaps, and people, if they have things to say.
Okay, so we're moving on to public expression now. Anybody want to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? Yes, Lee. And if you could you come up to the podium and provide...
You got a signature.
Provide us your name, please.
Lee Edmondson for the record. I want to give you all an update on the Anderson Alternatives Ishviam situation. I've had several conversations with Ishvi. Ishvi is contacting his roofing contractor to get an estimate on the cost of overlaying tin on the improperly permitted composition roof on the south face of the building. As soon as I get that number from Ishvi, I'll be drawing up a formal proposal, and I'm going to be talking with somebody, maybe county council, maybe somebody more learned than I am, about the proper procedure to get it into the pipeline to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Harold, thank you.
Just for the record, the reason why we're using the podium is for the tape recorders up here, and sometimes if people were talking in the back, some of the board members couldn't hear everything, and then neither could the tape recorder.
Oh, this is an interesting.
I wish I had a shim to offer you there.
I used to
Sorry, I
control,
can't
how's
help you
that?
out there.
I'm Harold Houck. I'm a resident of the Historic District and have been a chair and member of the Historic Review Board for 6 years. And I, as I spoke out a little earlier, I was very distressed to see John's resignation, and it occurs to me that what was enumerated by John and what we have experienced here for many months now is a failure on the part of building and planning to provide adequate services to the MHRB and, in essence, to our community. And I don't believe that failure on the part of building and planning is anything that's malicious or that I think that the staff would like to do a good job for us, but in the reality, they don't have enough resources, and so they have made the determination, I believe, that their resources will be placed somewhere else other than in support of the MHRB. So, in thinking about this, I think the only solution really is for the Board of Supervisors to take up the issue and the budget for MHRB, because it's a budget matter what it comes down to. If they don't have the staff to do the work necessary, then they have to cut corners someplace. And staff has determined, I believe management has determined, that the MHRB is the place where they will cut their resources. And so I think that it's incumbent upon the Board of Supervisors to meet and discuss and determine whether they want to have a true historic district here in town. Because the way things are currently, with the fees that are charged, with the delays that are imposed, and with the lack of support, no minutes is, you cannot have a body of the representing the people where the minutes are not provided. That's an example. The Board of Supervisors need to meet, discuss this, establish priorities for management in the county, and establish a budget amount that will meet the needs of this community. Thank you.
Norman Duvall, former supervisor of 5th District. It's a pleasure to be here. I've got several topics I want to address, but first I want to say thank you for sitting on a very difficult role that you've had in this town. I applaud the Historical Review Board for the efforts that it's made over the decades. And I'm sorry I'm losing one.
He's gonna
Is it
figure
coming
out,
back?
he's gonna figure out a shim for you, I think.
I think so you don't get hurt.
Yeah, he's gonna figure out a shim,
I'm very sorry that,
is my guess.
I'm sorry that that's happened. If I may wait for just a moment, excuse me. I do want to, your job sitting here is more difficult than the one I had in the past. You're all at the same level, you meet people every day on the street corner, the post office, and the market, and everybody has an opinion. Thank you for coming back. We have a fee-for-service basis in the budget of the Planning and Building Department. Planning and Building Services Department. And there are many reasons why people pick up that phone and call the department and ask for assistance, information, and service. Who's paying for that? The way this budget is structured is only those who come in with an application. And it is, I believe, patently unfair that the Board of Supervisors will not put some general fund money in to provide the services, not ask those who are putting in an application to cover the costs for everybody else. Those who come in with a checkbook and an application are basically subsidizing the public, something the county should be doing. Mendocino does not have a forum. If Covelo and Brook Trails, Wallala can have a MAC, Mendocino desperately needs a MAC. The review board has structure, paint color, trying to keep it, the town looking the way it does, but Mendocino has a character, and how can that be spoken to here? It's not, it doesn't belong on your agenda. Speaking of which, the chair or the executive committee should have access to the formation of the agenda. It should not just be a generation of something coming from staff. And speaking of agenda, I would say that until you approve the minutes, the action that you have taken on the previous meeting is not valid. When does the appeal process begin? At the time of the vote? No, it begins, you have 10 days after the minutes have been approved. So I say there's some serious questions here in how it's structured, how it's put together, what you do, and who it represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
My name's Ed O'Brien. I also, I was appointed by Norman in 1979, filled the seat. And I do appreciate you doing it because I know how hard it is. Everybody remembers the vote that didn't go their way. That's just what happens in a small town. And I do appreciate the director being here. But whenever you do minutes, and you put something on the minutes, if you simply put discussion, that's all that can happen. You can only talk about it. You can't make a motion. You can't fulfill that. You can only do that. So most times when something goes on an agenda, it is for discussion and possible action. You don't have to say what the action is, but you do have to tell the public that you're thinking of actually doing something. My biggest problem is, why do we have one applicant tonight? In 1981, go look it up, 10, 7, 12 a night. It's because we have fees. We have something called full cost recovery. This town already paid. We paid all the time. Property taxes, bed taxes, sales taxes. The idea that when you want to do something that you are demanded to do only in the town of Mendocino, not in Wallala, not in Westport, as in a sign or paint your house, you have full cost recovery. We paid ahead. And the only reason we have one thing tonight is because of that thing. That is not something you can do, and I understand that. But I do believe that it's going to be going to the Board of Supervisors, and I did not want the Building and Planning Department to think that we're going around them. it's killing the historic preservation. There are signs out there that should not be out there because people think if you put out a small sign on the sidewalk, it's okay. It's not. But if you have fees that cost too much, people will not do it. I know we've talked about all the different things that are going to be enforced. There are things that are happening to these buildings that are being signed off by building inspectors that have never gone before this board. And they have a much bigger impact than the color of the wood or the sign that's in front of it. And this has got to stop. We'll get into the exact things later, but there are real problems when there is a disconnect between your authority and the building department that just stamps things, looks good to me. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, my name is Rick Sachs, and one thing that I just don't understand is how the chairman of the board could put together a list of topics that he wanted addressed and then write a resignation letter saying I'm leaving because nobody's paying attention to me. And several of those items are on the agenda tonight to be addressed. Why didn't it happen when he was here? Thank you.
Yeah, I presume that some of this is gonna be responded to in the director's report, but we'll see. Okay, let's go to the public hearing that was continued from 2 months ago.
So in March, the review board considered a request to construct a 2237 square foot, 2-story single-family residence in the Mendocino mixed-use district at 45020 Ukiah Street in Mendocino. The review board at the time had concerns about the shape of the roof and the number of windows that were underneath the shed dormer. I put up drawings showing a revised plan. The orientation of the windows has been changed in response to the review board comments. The applicant provided some photographs of other dormers in town, which I put up on the board. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The project is pretty much as it was submitted in March with the adjustments based on the comments from the review board. I did notice that the applicant is here this evening. If you'd like to hear from them, I'm sure they'd be happy to present additional information.
Could you or the applicant describe in some detail the changes that were made from months ago?
So on the second floor, underneath the shed dormer were 3 windows, and below were 2 windows that were not aligned. Now they're proposing 3 windows that are aligned on the first and second floor. And I believe that these windows also better reflect the windows on this side, but this is really the side that it's labeled side elevation. There you are. It's really just this side elevation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe also one of the stairwell windows was slightly shifted.
Does the applicant have any?
Just a few, because I think the drawings speak for themselves, just minor modifications or some modifications, I think reflecting the conversation we had back in March. As Juliana said, the 3. The siding to a 3-lap instead of a 12-lap. And then we looked at the various shed dormers throughout town, and this is just representative of some of the ones that are here. And this particular one, though, it's hard to get an angle on it to see it, but this is right across the street from where the proposed house is, and it's basically the same 3-window shed dormer window layout that's right here. So, though we didn't copy any of the structures here in town, we used the various shed dormers and dormers that we saw along with the proposed structure, and we think that it's complementary to what's here, but also reflective of others that have been previously approved from some of the, like McCollum or Trillium, or I don't know what the house is across the street from us, but you probably recognize them from your various walks around town. Any questions I might answer?
I have a question because I conferred with an architect, because I'm not an architect. And I thought these photographs were very good. And it took her about a minute to say, well, because I kept saying, I don't know what's looking off to me. And it took her like 2 seconds to draw a little line and say, because shed dormers only have a piece of roof in front of them.
Some do.
So
As you can
the only
see.
ones that
No,
right, those
no.
two.
No, I mean, this is a dormer that ends into another roof line. So I think with architects or design people, I mean, my impression is that you're going to come up with probably an opinion for each one. Now, the previous approved drawings, which I have a copy of, had 5 shed dormer windows with no roof opinion. So that one was the one that was approved last year, I think. So there's an opinion of your consulted architect, but we've come up with a different drawing.
I have one question. Sure. I listened to, because I wasn't here, I listened to the recording of the hearing, and maybe other members of the board can help me here, but I don't remember any mention, and it could have been because I fell asleep, but I don't remember any mention of asking for another window downstairs.
I don't remember that either. I was here.
It was just noted that it had come up in comment that there was 2 versus, let's see, which was my east elevation. I think this is the east elevation. There was 2 down here versus 3.
There was, yeah.
It's just an add-on, and including, for that matter, there was more detail that was put around the windows. A broader, I don't know what this board piece, this trim piece is called, but a little bit broader to add a little more detail there along with the siding finish.
Okay. Any other questions to the applicants? Public comments. Anybody have anything to ask or comment on? Okay.
We'll wait and see what she put up.
So I'm putting up the drawings that went to the meeting in March.
I just don't remember
You
anyone
can see there's
saying,
2.
because the 2 and the 3 at least looks kind of,
Right, so
Not like
the
the wall
comment really
windows.
was the design here seemed not something that you would support. So what they've done is changed the design, the orientation of the windows. These 2 are close together. So they put 3 windows in a similar arrangement. So they're reflecting the pattern from the first floor to the second floor. And there really doesn't appear to be substantial changes on this elevation, but I am noting that there's greater detail around the windows. There's a stronger hood and window sill compared to this drawing.
Thank you. Lee,
Podium, right?
please.
I wasn't at the previous meeting, but now that Julia has put up, I would object to that array. That's visually weird. I think this is a much more sensible, symmetrical, and characteristic array of windows than theirs.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I disagree with what you said.
You disagree?
I agree.
Or you agree?
I agree.
Anyone
Can you
else?
have your name for the record, please?
Parallel.
Okay, close public hearing and board discussion.
Well, I can kick it off. I agree also that the new design is
more pleasing visually. And I don't believe that there are any violations of the guidelines in the proposed structure. I think last time the problem concerned the gate, the dormer, the shed dormer. There was some issues about the shed dormer, but it seems to me that there are an awful lot of shed dormers in this town, and I don't see how we can reject a design on the basis that it has shed dormers. So to me, this is an acceptable design. And as I said, I think the new design is much more pleasing than the one we saw last time.
Okay.
I also brought this design in front of someone whose taste I respect. And their comment was that it was to the original, to the March presented design, was lack of detail, very kind of vanilla. So I appreciate the fact that the applicant did listen to that. I think the third window below, there was no direct mention of that, but I remember Deidre was, Board Member Lamb was not in agreement with the design, but I like the details on this one. I think it adds to it. I agree, it doesn't, I don't think it acts against any of the design guidelines, and I think the applicant clearly brought up that it adheres to the various design guidelines and may not be in everyone's assembly the way that everyone would want it. To me, when I look at that, it's fairly nondescript. It's not offensive in my opinion. At the same time, I don't stop and go, oh my God, that's an amazingly beautiful building, but not every building has to be beautiful, and not every building is beautiful here. But I like the fact that the design elements are true to the guidelines and that they're incorporated, and it's just maybe a little more or less unique. And I appreciate the homework that the applicant did to bring about illustrations of other elements in the town. So at this point, I would be in support of approval of the design.
I think it's an improvement in what it was before. And I appreciate all the photographs, because I didn't realize there were so many that didn't have any roof line. These are new, these weren't in our packet, a couple of these ones. So I feel like it fits with that one.
Okay. That being the case, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this item, MHRB 2019-0002, as put forward in this revised version that the applicant has submitted to the board this time.
Is there a second?
A second motion.
Just as per the motion, the last time this came around, part of the motion was to revoke or remove approval of the prior application.
That's one of the conditions in that staff is recommending, condition number 7.
So the question staff, do we need to make anything for the motion
It's
regarding that, or is it just
It's
approval of the
included in
motion?
the recommended conditions. It's the motion adopting the conditions as recommended.
Where was that?
It's on staff report pages 3 and 4.
So here.
Right, so we also have to,
I think it's as presented by the staff.
okay, all right.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the project as revised with the conditions as recommended by staff. Board Member Roth,
Aye.
Board Member Potash,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb,
Aye.
Board Member Kapler.
All right.
So the motion passes 4-0. The project has a 10-day appeal period, and the decision can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors. On the 11th day, we can issue the permit with no appeal involved.
Okay, moving on. Thank you. Thank you. Matters from the board. Vote for the Historic Preservation Award, the illustrious.
So, if I may, we received 3 nominations. At the last meeting, I distributed the nomination from Warren Rex, with State Parks nominating the sheriff's substation. And then at the meeting, we received a verbal nomination from a member of the public, Ed O'Brien, nominating the street lamps and PG&E. And then Deirdre Lamb, one of the board members, submitted a nomination of the house at 10560 Kelly Street, and I believe I included her nomination with the packet. So there are 3 projects that are nominated for you to discuss. And if you would like, we could schedule presenting the award at the June meeting, or if you choose another meeting, that's fine too.
Okay. One thing, yeah.
I didn't receive anything on the 1065.
Okay. All right, I can give you mine.
Should we have the sponsors of each of the people nominating them speak on behalf?
I don't believe Warren Rex is here.
Okay.
Is this the talent part of the contest?
Yes, it is.
Not the swimsuit one, you can sit down.
Did anyone else?
Right there.
Did you receive a copy?
Well, you should probably speak.
How should, well, I can speak in support of it,
Dan,
but I should probably
what
recuse
is the-
myself from the
What are the
vote.
rules for this? Are we voting on one, or can we
Yeah.
support all of them, or
One gets it.
one?
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, gotta make the hard choice sometimes in life.
that's why we get the big bucks.
You're right. Ed, do you want to speak on behalf of your
Oh, did you need?
Sure.
Because the sheriff's not gonna be happy with me anyhow.
Has he ever?
Yeah, the reason I brought up PG&E is because for probably 30 years, we've been trying to get rid of the old poles, and we got underground in town, and we still have these ugly poles with these horrible lights sticking out of it, and it just ruined the look. So we were told for years at the Community Services District, who's in charge of streetlights, that PG&E couldn't do it. And finally, all of a sudden, they came out and said, oh, we do have some money for streetlights. And so the Community Services District did go through that. It was no longer on that board at the time. And I thought that they came up with a very good plan. I know that there's one of those things that you don't please everybody, but the light generally does what it's supposed to do, is go straight down. It's not as high as the poles used to be, and they more or less disappear at night. Some people do believe that they are a little Disney-ish, and I understand that, but oh well.
No.
Okay, well, I'm gonna speak on behalf of the house that I nominated, which is at 10560 Kelly Street, which is the last street on the western part of Mendocino. And I just thought it was so impressive. They had architect Bob Schlosser of Schlosser and Newberger Architects to design a house that was built, but it wasn't really built with a family in mind. And I thought, this town needs families. It needs, to be a vibrant community. And the property owners have 2 children, and the house upstairs wasn't configured enough for an extra bedroom. And I just could not believe how impressive it was. They took off the entire roof and added a whole back part of the house and put it back together, and it looks coherent. It looks like a really, really nice house. The work was done by Wind and Sea Construction, which was Wind Spirit owned, and I thought he did an amazing job. At one point, it came before the board that they were going to remove the chimney because they didn't need the chimney. They were going to have propane heat. And one of the neighbors, Erin Dirtner, spoke up about it. She says, I feel like chimneys are a feature of the house that is part of the design of a house. And so they built a mock chimney on the house, and it just, when you go by, you don't see that it's any kind of different house. It fits right in, and I thought that they went over and above on the house. That's not it.
Okay. How does staff recommend that we choose among the three?
Would you like staff to say something on the third application?
I think so, that would be good, yeah.
Sure.
Rex is not here.
That would be nice, thank you.
So Lauren Rex wrote a really lovely nomination, and it was distributed to the board members at the March meeting. And he had mentioned how this is the carriage house associated with the Ford House. And this building had really been relegated to be a storage building, and also it was in the dirt, right? The floor was in the dirt, and the building just had been neglected. And he wrote about how with the sheriff deciding to use the substation to provide some community services right here in town, that the building has been restored. Not only has it been put on a permanent foundation, which will allow the building to last for a much longer time, the building is restored to its original configuration, which is truly a type of preservation, to not alter a building, but to maintain it in its long-standing shape and form. To the point where, for example, the original doors are used, and only when the building is occupied by one of the sheriff or their staff that the door is open and you can actually see the modern office that's inside. And I remember from the application that the bay-facing back door to the carriage house, they even put the lighting up into the architectural eave. So the lighting is triggered by motion, but it's actually hidden into the architectural detail and really isn't visible unless the light is turned on. Lauren was really pleased to submit that nomination for the board's consideration. He felt it was an excellent example of preserving structures in the historic district.
I feel like I should recuse myself from the votes since I nominated
You're not gaining monetarily from it, are you?
I don't know if this is relevant, but can you remind us the categories that the sheriff's substation building and the house down on Kelly Street was?
Sure, I can look it up.
As I recall, the sheriff's station wasn't on the map. No, it wasn't that. They couldn't find any record of it because it was an outbuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So when we originally passed that application, as I recall, they couldn't find it.
The Ford House is
Exactly.
category 1 structure.
Right, but
Ford house.
the outbuilding wasn't able to be determined, is that right?
So staff would consider the buildings associated with the historic category 1 structure to be all of the historic resource. And then, do you know the name of the Leeds home?
Their
Okay, so I'll just look at
gosh, I could look it up.
Kelly Street. Okay, so you put the address on here, right? 10560.
Yeah, 10560.
Alright. So, there are several Silveria homes on that block at Kelly Street. And there are different categories of their homes. I remember that it was a Silveria home. There are category 2A, category 1, category 4P, and a category 3, but I can eliminate some of these.
I have the list here.
I think it's a category 4B.
I'd have to, interface it with my
Okay,
parcel quest to see the
Yeah.
APN number.
Yeah, we
Right.
need to EPN for
I think,
Well,
but the
no,
other
I
ones
thought
have
it was a two-way.
possible.
We don't know which APN.
Yeah, it could be a 2A or a 4B.
right.
Doesn't look good for the streetlights. 30 years.
I don't know.
Just for the record, there are some people that, most people really love streetlights for what they are. The question is whether or not that's actually historic preservation in the sense that these others are. So, do you have any recommendations how we go ahead, or should we just?
The 4B discuss and find some consensus.
Okay. Do we have preferences? Do we have preferences?
My preference is for the street lighting project. And to me, I think this is one of the most significant changes that has occurred in this town in the 15 years that I've lived here. And I think the new streetlights have just done wonders to improve the looks of the town. And they're, of course, dark sky friendly, and I think they do a beautiful job of lighting the various areas. And I think they're just plain gorgeous. So I think there are 3 good candidates here. I think they're all worthy candidates, but this to me is the most significant change that's happened. And so I would prefer the award to go to that one.
Okay.
Being the new guy on the block, I do benefit directly where the location of the Siegel Inn is. It's nice. I definitely benefit from those. They're beautiful. I'm not as keenly aware as the before and after. As per the direct historic preservation in literal context, I'm gonna throw my vote. Changed my mind. I'm gonna throw it towards the carriage house, I think. And that's because without that work, I think we would have lost an historic building. But I would also encourage those who do not get the award this year to come back and requite, if they can, put in for next year.
The house that I thought was pretty well done and. I don't know
Yeah.
what else to say
That's
about
you.
it.
I have to say, I'm like Ian, actually, I actually changed my point of view after your presentation. What I remember about that carriage house was that there was a commitment on the part of the parks and sheriff that there would be some effort to preserve as much of the original materials as possible. And from what I recall, when that bulldozer came through, was that there was no effort whatsoever at making that kind of effort. So I immediately gravitated towards Deirdre's nomination. But I have to say, I think that all things considered, I'll take it on faith that someone who knows more than I do made the determination that there simply wasn't an opportunity to preserve much or any of the original material in that building. So.
Just like I address the vote before you make a vote. You know, being the new guy in town, could, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julia, could you do a public project and an on-site private project? You give something for the streetlights or maybe I'm not trying to twist this to my brethren over there, the sheriff, for his award, but just, like you do a public project that was really great this year. I don't know, maybe Howard Dash will come and do some improvements you like someday. I'm gonna work to get you some improvements.
Sure, good luck on that.
Good luck on that one, but I don't know, maybe as over the years, maybe hopefully some money flows and you get some public improvements you want someday, or a park.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Right, or, right, maybe you wanna give a public award for right-of-way stuff, or a public facility you really liked, and then maybe a residence or commercial structure or a resident, I don't know. Some historic districts have a commercial property, a residential property, and public improvements. I've seen it in historic preservation boards, it had 3,
That
4.
sounds like a good compromise.
If you wanna get
Ed,
You made up this,
I'm sorry, your name for the.
my name's Edward, you made up this thing, it's a good thing. There's nothing that says you have to do it for 1, for 2, or for 3. I think you're clear to say that these projects met the criteria that this review board works to strive, and you can acknowledge all of their works at the same time. I don't think it's bad.
what does the rest of the board think about having a public and a private, two separate awards?
Is the sheriff's considered both?
Yeah.
You could do 3, you could do this, as we said, public, private, right of way. Covers everything. Frankly, I think you need
Everybody gets an A.
We're all above average.
Giving awards people for good work.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem expanding.
I wouldn't have a problem getting all 3 of them awards.
Well, I do like the idea of the public and private idea. I don't know that we need 3 awards, but yes, Mr. Edmondson.
For the record, Lee Edmondson, I don't think that you're precluded. I don't think you're required to give out a single award to a single entity. I've never, of course, I'm not sure that policy has ever been written down. But I vaguely remember in the past there were multiple recipients, but I don't see anything that would preclude that. I think it's up to your discretion. Your good discretion.
So what do we think about having one public and one private award, at least this year? Support that idea?
I think encourages good design and preservation of the historic reason why we're here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So there's only one private nomination, so I guess they get the private award.
Okay,
So the public board members can vote between the streetlights and the sheriff's substation. Call for a vote?
all right, so, when you vote, I guess say which of the 2 projects you would be voting for. Okay, so,
And should we affirm our support of the private as well?
okay, let's vote on the private first. All right, so nominated for an award of private residential preservation within the district, nominated is 10560 Kelly Street. Board Member Kapler, what is your vote?
Aye.
Board Member Roth,
Aye.
Board Member Potash,
Aye.
Board Member Lamb. Aye. So that passes 4-0.
May I just make a comment before we make vote on the public? just to remind the board members, we have already publicly and directly and personally thanked PG&E for how well they handled everything. So in terms of acknowledging their good work, this board has already done that. That's my first point. The second point, I'll just reiterate, there are people who agree that the streetlights are one of the great, best things that have happened in terms of public works in this town in a long time. But that's not the same as whether or not it's historic preservation, and that's what this award is for. So, just wanted to make that comment before.
I guess you don't have my neighbors, huh?
Okay, so again, when you vote, you'll either state that you're voting for the streetlights or you're voting for the Ford carriage house.
Okay.
Board Member Kapler,
Street lighting.
Board Member Roth,
Ford Carriage House.
Board Member Potash,
Ford carriage house.
Board Member Lamb.
Or carriage house.
Okay, so there were 3 votes for the carriage house and 1 for street lamps. So the carriage house passes. Thank you.
Okay, now let's get to the good ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awards will be going up next meeting.
Right.
Okay. All right, Next item is 10B, discussion of simplifying color approval process for exterior paints.
Are you making, what are the awards gonna be? Are you gonna be putting out framing, or are you gonna be doing ponds? What, I mean, is that?
We have enough money to do it? No, just kidding. It's, I hear it's a proclamation, is it for the board?
Okay,
And
good.
is it framed, Yeah, I mean, if you.
Yeah, frame it, yeah.
I mean,
So I think we're,
Big deal, and usually you give one to the, like there's more than one, I think
Do you want us
last
to
time we
invite
did.
him to the meeting so that
Yeah.
you can give it to him?
Sure.
Yeah, so usually, like for instance, in the building that one last night, which was on High Street, there was a couple of awards.
Yeah, we
given
gave them all
because
out.
we gave one to the
we'll take care of that.
painter, okay, great.
Okay,
And you'd like it presented at the June meeting?
that'd be great.
That would be nice, thank you.
And if you, I don't know if you. I don't know if you've seen. Proclamation you have, but I can show you some, if you want to change it, make it more fancy, there's all kinds of fun.
So I'll deal directly with the chair on that.
Yeah, just send them.
Okay, color, exterior colors, I think this has been floating around for a long time, this discussion item as to whether or not there's a more efficient way for property owners to apply for a exterior paint permit than going through the laborious process of getting a paint color approved that has been approved 1,000 times before. And I think what Deirdre was working on was putting together a series of paint colors, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the idea was that this simply would allow property owners to get effectively a free pass in terms of not having to go to the board. This would be a counter permit, over-the-counter permit, so long as they used one of the approved colors. Was that your understanding as to what the intent?
It was, and where I got confused and stuff was that there's 150 colors out there, and I was trying to figure out which, like how many? Is it gonna be 25 or 50 or there's, can they actually, I mean, I really did get stuck on this because I went and I had like zillions of paint chips and I'm going around the houses. And to put it into a book and say, these are the ones that are approved, kind of takes out all the ones that have been approved because they're not gonna be in the book. So if someone says, I want my house the same color blue as Mendocino, and that one isn't in the book, say, well, then where does the line get drawn? Can they do variations on the colors? Now, if they could, that would be simpler because there was someone in town that, for instance, had a yellow house. It was like lemon yellow, and they painted it, and it's more of like a darker yellow. And to me, yellow is yellow. So I don't know if you can actually put paint chips in there and decide which yellow, because there's, variations on that. So
What if you consider this? What if you consider, instead of putting together this catalog of paint chips that could be massive, what if we use your idea and simply allow applicants, currently, as I understand from staff, that if somebody is interested in repainting their house, and so long as they are within certain subjective, it is close to the original color, then staff will issue a permit anyway without going through the board. And I wonder if we can use that, broaden that same principle and allow people to come forward with an existing paint color here in town. And so long as they are, again, based on staff discretion, within reason of that color, they can go ahead and get that approved just as they could on their own house if they're within a certain degree.
If I'm understanding, you're saying, I see a paint color down on Kelly Street that I really like. If it has been approved by the review board and I'm way over on Caston Street, I could have planning staff approve my house to be a color that was previously approved on Kelly Street.
I think that's a good idea, and I'll tell you what, the other thing when I started researching all this was I went to the gallery bookstore and I got the, you know, because what kind of houses are these in Mendocino? They're all fairly unique, really. So I got a book on Victorian. Well, Victorian, they were like dark red, a lot of them had black trim and, you know, dark burgundies, like very kind of gothic, and it wasn't anything like Mendocino at all. So it was kind of an educational experience, but I think that most of the colors here are sort of lighter and brighter. I don't know, really, there's not too many that are dark, and if they are, they're more like blue. Maybe like,
I thought that if you were repainting your house and you were painting it basically in the same color, or, you know, the shade was off a little bit, you didn't need to get permission.
no, you don't.
You just.
No, you don't. No, you can't.
So,
But
right.
let's say someone has a greenhouse
Yeah.
and they say, you know, I decided I want to paint my house yellow.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address the board, if I could read you the section on the exemptions to, that's right. And let me also back up before I read
What are you
this.
looking at?
I'm reading 276004 exemptions. It is it says basically routine maintenance repainting of any building or structure in the same basic shade of color.
Well,
Now,
that's
you know,
true.
and that's right. So,
Well, but if someone wants to change the color,
if they want to change the
the
color,
fee
then
was
they have-
went up to like $900.
then they have to come to you.
But it
what my
shouldn't be $900.
When I first met with board members and residents in the community, what I suggest, the reason this is on here is I suggested that you adopt a color palette. I've seen that done in 2 other historic districts, and it was just left at the counter. Now, in that case, we had Den Edwards, and they came out and looked at the historic districts, said these are they did a whole color palette.
Who's Don Edwards?
They were a company down in Southern California that sells paint. They did a color palette for us. We took it to the historic board. The historic board did some changes to it and eventually blessed it. And I was just suggesting that, you don't have to do it. You know, we can just
But can it be variations of each of those? I mean,
I'm wondering is it Benjamin Moore? Here's the major supplier of paint. I'm buried right now.
this came up because
If
one of
somebody-
our neighbors here, Marion Bush, has a greenhouse, avocado green.
Yeah.
And her husband passed away like 2 years ago, Jack. And she says, I just want to do something different. So this was like right when the fee changes all happened. And she came in and she was really angry. She's like, I can't believe the fee without paint, without a painter, without a ladder, without a brush, is $900 to bring the application in front of MHRB to change the color of my house from green to yellow. It's not, it just doesn't seem fair.
And if I can get back to my idea is, let me see if you can't do it, or there's nobody in the community that can do this, I'll call Benjamin Moore myself. I just painted my historic house in Ukiah. And maybe I'll see if I can, maybe by the planning and building service director calling, give us a little help. But sometimes they have people who will come out and I know they know the town of Mendocino. I imagine they would love to have their name at the bottom of a color palette that you approved. And, you both of you and I can drive around town and you can see what kind of colors you like. I think you like them. Maybe there's ones I should drive with you and you point out to.
But I don't think it's a
Juliana,
question of my personal taste. It shouldn't be.
No, it is. Because you approve any changes to colors other than the basic shades there are now. I was trying to get you out of having to do that when they made changes and just get an adopted color palette that we could keep at the Fort Bragg office when anybody called.
I could see
Or we
that.
could stick it on our website and they could pull it up and see, here's these base colors are allowed, these trim colors are allowed, or this,
Hey, man, I just ask a procedural question. To what extent can the board decide to just not have these permits, these exterior paint permits? And I asked the question because in the 5+ years that I've been on this board, we've never rejected one. And the last one that I think was rejected was the one that we applied for and had nothing to do with color, had to do with the number of colors. So my point is, we're using a lot of staff time, we're using a lot of board time, which is worth a lot less, for something that's universally approved anyway. So I'm not quite sure the basis of ever rejecting an application.
Now, I'm gonna give you a case in point too, if I may. There's Kelly and Michael Barrett.
Oh, just before you do that, can I just get an answer
Yeah.
to that question?
So it would involve, I'd like to say two things, please.
Okay.
It would involve a change to our zoning ordinance, and that can be a minor amendment, but after the planning commission recommends the minor amendment to the board of supervisors and the board of supervisors approves it, we also go to the coastal commission for them to find those minor amendments are consistent with the coastal act. So that's the process of taking away from the zoning code something that is currently required.
But if I can address,
I would
if I can address the board, Brent Schultz, planning director, I would prefer we not do that. I'm going through that process right now. We're trying to get coastal accessory dwelling units, and we have other ordinances going, and the process is just
Okay,
killing.
Yeah.
bad idea.
It's a, you know, but
Truly
which is
doesn't
why,
bad idea.
which is why I'm trying to propose this approach for color palette. And I understand that.
We had an applicant last year. And somehow it was a very vague, color choice that they chose that was gonna be sort of a whitewashed, like sort of antique style. Well, they got very stuck, as planner Cherry can tell you, because she went there and said, well, this isn't the color that MHRB board approved. So they had to come back for clarification.
This particular property, if I may, this property was approved to have an oil stain that would be semi-transparent and have the appearance of the existing wood material at the time that the review board considered the application. The property owner went ahead and rather than using an oil-based stain, used an opaque paint and then layered the paint to give it sort of a weathered look, which was not what the review board had considered or approved. And that was brought to my attention by one of the review board members, and so we began a discussion with the property owner that they had the option of either complying with their original permit or going back to the review board to have an alternative color approved, and that's what the property owner chose to do.
As I recall, they paid the fee to come back before the board.
Yeah, right, MHRB permits, you do need to pay a fee to receive an MHRB permit.
Right, so I think what Dan's proposing is that if it's like a color that's already in town, then it would be approved, so even if they decided not to do the stain.
They can't do that because of the way the ordinance is written. I mean, it's a good idea.
I see.
Like, it's just, look at the way it's written. When they change the color, they have to come before you. We'd have to change, that's why I suggested color palette. And I get it, that color is really,
But can it be,
I don't
there
want
be
to
some
suggest
variations on
This is just an effort to, okay.
I don't want to be the judge of color. You know, that's your purview.
It's just, can there be variations, or are we gonna get stuck on, you
No,
know,
it's-
if you know, we approve this color yellow, and the color yellow is actually lighter than that, is that gonna mean that they have to repaint their whole house because they use this yellow instead of the one that was in the
It
book?
becomes the same basic shade of color, and then, you know,
With
or am I gonna bring in
variations, sort
Trent
of like
Taylor and write something
Instead
that?
of being really, like it has to be exactly like this.
I have a couple of other comments, if I may, in response to something that you had said, Chair Potash. This last year, we had an application to paint a commercial building a color blue, and the review board actually was not happy with that color. And the applicant came back and did an alternative color. And there was a lot of discussion about the color.
Yeah, that's
So
a great meeting.
We don't have, of all our applications, usually is when people are doing other remodeling that they propose colors. And that's part of the overall application. We have very few people who come in who just want to change the color of their home. That's the only thing that they're coming in for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two pieces here. I like the planning director's idea of having Benjamin Moore do the footwork for us. And I think if we provided a palette, it would help the applicants with understanding the direction we're going. So I think both as a communication tool, it'd be great for applicants as well as not having our staff do it, have an interested party who could benefit from it. The other piece is what I'm hearing is that the fees are too high. I think that's the underlying part of a big piece of this discussion. And so rather than trying to nick away at oh, can we just bless this or let it go? And again, the new guy on the block, fees are probably on the discussion board for tonight or later. I just want to point that out. That's probably the underlying issue.
I hate to keep going on about this, but honestly, there must be 100 different kinds of white paint. It's unbelievable, the amount of shades of white paint. It was
If you've ever done the
And
Moore
so
store at
if
Fort
we
Bragg,
approve one white paint, does everybody have to cookie cutter use that white paint? Or can planning say, that looks close enough, okay, it's a little yellower or a little bluer? Can staff make that decision of not having to be exact?
If I can through the chair, we do something like that all day long. People come in and they say, I want to update my roofing material. I need to replace my windows. I need a new front door. I need to repaint my house. And we do the research to determine whether we as staff can find that color is in substantial conformance or not, or as that shape is. And when we do, we come to the board and we say we issued that sign. The sign is basically the same colors as it was approved, and it's just a new sign copy, or the windows are being changed out, just to let you know. Or if we find that we cannot find that it's the same basic shade of color, we suggest to the applicants, the property owner, that they apply for an MHRB permit.
Okay. Lee.
For the record, Lee Edmondson, I'd like to circle around to something that Director Schultz said. We don't have to invent the wheel here. If I heard you correctly, there are other historic districts whose historic review boards have already adopted palettes. Is that an accurate reflection?
I have worked in ones where they have adopted color.
And you know where they live?
Do I know?
You know their telephone number?
What?
There are districts that have adopted pre-approved color palettes for historic districts.
Right, so the thing, if I may.
My point is this. We don't have to invent the wheel here.
Right.
If there are templates out there in the existing world of historic preservation that already exist, all we have to do is call them up, send us a copy of your palette, and that'll give you something tangible.
Except for that their palette might be a different
And
palette.
that, you won't know that. We're all speculating here
Well, that makes
until, that's why we have templates. You
Okay.
don't have to reinvent the wheel on it. Secondly, you not only want to deal with color house, but also trim.
Right.
So there's that thing, but you know, if you don't have the roadmap.
Right. Okay, can I just make a suggestion just to expedite this?
Sure.
I will commit personally to provide one or more major paint companies' ideas of historic colors at our next meeting for consideration of both main color and trim, so that we do have something to consider. Are there other comments that we?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good step.
I think this idea of palettes and the delegation of the authority to make decisions to building and planning is a mistake on the part of the MHRB. The MHRB guidelines and your ordinance require that you make the decisions. The problem is not the fact that you folks have to make decisions. The problem is the fact that the applicant has to pay $900 to get the issue. The issue is not the color, not you're making decisions, and what you're trying to do by saying delegating it to building and planning is cover over that mistake, the mistake in the fees. And so I would encourage you to address the root cause of the problem, not to try and delegate your authority to building and planning. Harold Howard for the record.
Ed O'Brien, I do have a problem with over the counter because there's no minutes. So therefore, when there's something reported back to you that it was approved over the counter, the public will not know about it. So I think that's a problem. I kind of agree with Harold, but I think that shades of colors shouldn't be that much. The big problem is even though you did not turn down a color, you modified it. By the fact that you existed and you questioned it and the public said, wow, that's really blue, you came up with a great color. So the value is that because of a meeting, they reconsidered and they came out with a very good one. So the fact that you didn't have to vote no. And the only other one is the fees. It's all about the fees on painting. We're the only place on the entire coast that you have to ask Mother May. That's fine, because when you bought the house, you bought the deal. But we didn't buy that deal of how much it's going to cost. And the idea that someone misunderstood and had to do it twice, it's just a crime. It's a crime. So, but that's more fees, but it does connect directly to paint.
Right. Bruce asks, as far as color goes, you can say this is the color of the house, but most of the houses have 3 different colors on them. So there's a combination that gets looked at. And what would make a lot more sense to me is if somebody wanted to change the colors, isn't there a way that they can come before the board and say, here's what I want to do, and not have to go through the big staff report and just keep it simple? It doesn't cost a bunch of staff time to write it up. They come before you and say, this is what I want to do, and part of what I think the board would be responsible to do is to consider the colors that surround that house, because there has to be harmony in the whole environment. It's not just that one building. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bill and Bob, I have 5 bungalows down in the commercial district. I try to keep them the same thing. It's like maintaining 5 boats in harbor. So there's painting goes on all the time. It's much more economic to paint the same colors. And if it's not your home and you're looking at it from a maintenance point of view more than this, and it's compatible with the neighbors in the setting, it's okay. I think most people want to save money when they're painting their home. I can understand the example you gave where someone wants to make a change. That's why I think you don't have giant problems. I think when people make it, as I have in the past, made an application to the historic review for a number of changes on 5 buildings at one time, including painting, that I submitted colors and they looked at it, and it was counseled at the planning department that you're dealing with a contextual thing of being in the district. Go around and find cases and examples that will support what you want to do. And that's the best way to get approval and not to end up taking up everybody's time and spending a lot of money on it and coming back. And I think tones and shades, as you're taking shades, is kind of a general thing, but it's easy when someone starts pushing something that's a pastel and becomes Dayglow pink, that they've gone beyond the term shade.
Yeah.
So I think most people are reasonable about these things. And I think it would be like the other 2 gentlemen said, to keep it in the context of the Historic Review Board. I only can remember one time Voodoo Pink, when it had a gallery over on Lansing Street, came in and had Dayglow Pink on their sign. That's the only application I ever saw here that was refused. Okay, so I think it can be handled here and not $900 involving one staff time.
And Chairman, if I address the board, and I would also offer to call Benjamin Moore, people I dealt with at the Kaya office.
Great.
See if they'd send out a salesman. Try to go, I'm planning to go director, just spend a lot of money with the
Any other, yes? Mary?
Yeah, my name is Mary Ann McGee. I just offer the thought that really we have a local Benjamin Moore dealer on the coast. You're on the coast, not in Ukiah. A lot of times you're new. We get real sensitive on the coast when you're talking about taking our business inland. Go to Norvell's. I'm sure the Norvell family will be happy to help you.
Okay,
Good point.
awesome. Anyone else?
Just that we got our.
Names,
Oh,
names?
Justine Herbert. We had our house painted actually we're still finishing painting it, but it's mostly done and we just did the same shade we had before. And I guess I just want to say Benjamin Moore paint is the most expensive paint that's out there. And I would want to have a choice between different types of paints.
We're just talking about colors now. I mean, they can match a different kind of paint to Benjamin Moore color. Easy enough.
This gentleman's talking about Benjamin Moore palette, and Benjamin Moore is an expensive paint, so that would be another hurdle to jump for people to consider a more expensive paint. Also, colors are so subtle, and paints get discontinued over time. You might not find those same shades that, 8 years later, I could just see this thing turning into a very complex problem using a color palette. And the third thing is that I think the basic question is about the amount of the fee, that's prohibitive for people. And because the color selection process for us was easy, we didn't have any. We just painted it on a piece of paper and handed it over. And also you people came and looked at the house. Just eyeballed it. So it was an easy process. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, how does the board want to proceed on this? Palette, no palettes?
I think a pot's good, however, I do, like that she brought up that maybe in 10 years the color might be discontinued or something. I mean, maybe in
Okay.
10 years it could be re-looked at or something, or
May I suggest that we will have color palettes available for board and public observation next meeting, and we can have this discussion, and hopefully a resolution at that time.
Okay, so if I may, for clarity, on the next meeting's agenda, you'd like it to be a discussion and action item?
Yes.
all right.
Okay,
We
10,
don't have to vote on it, right? We can just-
No, it's discussion.
Okay.
10C, discussion of simplifying the format of MHRB staff reports to the board. I think,
Chairman Potash, can I
yes.
address the board on that?
Absolutely.
I'd like to suggest something as a way to move through this one quickly, is if you take a staff report where you feel that it's just way too much information and you didn't need it to make a decision, and give it to me, you can cross out the sections and then you can email it to me or scan an email, or I'm at the coast 3 to 4 times a month for different meetings. I do run here and run back because I'm in back-to-back meetings, but I'll pick it up or you can email it to me. I need to sit down and look at it with Julia and our county council to make sure you're not taking out something I'm legally required to do. I don't want to have you approve something and I didn't put something in a staff report and we get challenged. So I just want to look at that real quickly. But if there's stuff in there, like I know I had one comment from somebody last meeting, there was some historic context information in there about who lived in a structure, and somebody told me they didn't want it. So, but maybe, I don't know, a couple of you could take a staff report, or if you want to work with people in the community and X out what you don't want, I will. Actually, that was one of my suggestions when I first met with the board, and actually somebody brought it up, I'm like, yeah, let's do it, because less time, means maybe I can lower fees later when I start seeing in our traffic system, we're not spending as much time preparing staff reports. And we are tracking, everything. We are not in a money-making business in government. It's just to collect the time it takes us to get something done and what our weighted rate is. Our weighted rate for planning and building is $90 an hour, when you take the whole department. You know.
All right, well, I think you and I discussed it on the phone with Julie Hacker, so
Yeah.
for the record. And at this point, my feeling is if a sign has been approved on a building, we don't need a packet this big with handwritten letters from the Kelly House Museum from 1893 about it, because it's already had approval. So we don't need, all we're looking at is the sign. So how much time should that take? It shouldn't take long. It shouldn't have to take a whole, I think almost every building in this town has already been historically sort of documented. So I can see if you're altering the shape of the building and construction, but for something as simple as a sign or paint color, that staff doesn't need to make a report that's an inch thick. It's not productive use of staff's time. And in order to, what you're saying is that you're passing the fee cost of how long it takes for staff at $90 an hour. So if a building has already had a sign that's been approved and a new business moves in there, then it shouldn't take staff very long to just, take the pictures of the sign and bring it before us and approve it. And how much less can we get the fees down to? Because the fees, we keep hearing the fees again and again.
And I'll be happy to talk about fees when I get to director.
Okay.
I thought that this report that we got on this item that we approved today is sort of a classic example of overkill. There was just so much information in here about the history of the Red House and the Red House itself, and we're not touching the Red House. This had nothing, that Red House is part of that lot, but I don't think we needed all of that information. And last time I made a point that when I got this package was about twice as thick as this. And there was just a tremendous amount of duplication in here. I went through it and just threw the stuff away that was in here twice. So I'm not sure why that's happening, but it's happened time and time again. So I think you could certainly save at least paper in the future and not do that. Yeah.
Well, Chairman Posh, I heard what you're saying, and I'll say it again. If you don't want any historical information on properties around this or this property, and it's just a sign, we're just gonna give you elevations of the sign, where it's at. Maybe some colored elevations or something like that. If you wanna send me an email, we'd like this kind of stuff in there, or send it to Dan and send it to me. I am happy to change the format of the staff reports. I do not want, the staff is right now just inundated with coastal development permits. People want to build their houses on the coast. We want to
Just wait till June 1st when they approve the 1,200 square foot
Yeah, well, we're working on those ADUs for the coast, and that hopefully will get done by the board, and hopefully the coastal commission doesn't change it. And
kitchens and bathrooms.
And I'm also preparing drawings that are going to be free of charge to hand out to people to use. The board wants that.
For
1,200.
Historic Village?
Not for the historic village, for inland and coastal areas that want to use it.
For ADUs? That's nice.
But back to that, I really do, when we talked about this when I first got here, show me where you don't like it in the reports. I don't want the staff to be spending, if I can lower fees, I'd love to announce to the board, hey, we were able to lower our fees over here. And we do have a tracking system. We watch how much time it takes us to get things done, and then we just go time times weighted rates, and you know this being the finance director. We have to go to the auditor here. I never had to go to an auditor before and get through that. We just did that process. So, but I told the board, and I will tell you, I'm open to relooking at fees, but I am, it's the board's final decision on what they want to do. I don't have any authority other than to show them in finance what it costs to do something.
Can I ask Juliana a question? Just because I'm not as enthusiastic as some other people about reducing the material we receive. And I'm not saying that I necessarily go through every page of it, but our job is to know everything into consideration. So my question is, just how much time, generally speaking, on the type of application that we were just talking about, how much time is being spent on providing that kind of historic information and context?
Okay, so the historic information, the little handwritten notes from the 1890s.
Right.
So we have, thanks to Eleanor Sparrow and I believe perhaps Diana Wiedemann, we have an assessment not of all properties in the Historic District A, but many of them. And we have a file system. And what I do is I take the paper documents and I scan them and make them into a PDF. And then I store it. And when if an application comes up again for that same property, I go back to the digital file and attach it to the staff report.
So you're not going down to the library and researching these things. I mean, the idea that that the director is suddenly going to have all this free staff time to allow a reduction of fees, if that's the motivation here, I'm just curious whether or not that's actually realistic.
Well,
because it doesn't sound like a lot of time's being spent.
But I don't want you to just look at that. I want you to look at the whole staff report. There's other stuff I know. People have told me they don't like certain things in there. Just look at the whole report. Maybe take this last one and just go, Brent, take the report. I don't need this, and this after reading it again. And let me look at it with the county council and make sure if it's something you don't need to see or you don't think you need to see, and they're going, oh yeah, because I do have a coastal zoning code that's been adopted for you. It's very specific on certain things. And I gotta make sure when you make your vote, I provided the right data. I don't wanna have someone challenge you.
I've just been up here more than once where we're being asked to make a decision about a piece of property that we know nothing about. And it's not because you've done a bad job, it's because that information may not be available. And I can just see in our effort to try to streamline this process and save $45 worth of time, that there are going to be more instances where the data information is available, but you're so concerned about streamlining this process that we end up with applications that we really don't know anything about the property, even though the information in those cases are actually available. So I'm not that excited about trying to save. Again, if it's matter of...
I'll speak for don't speak, it's hours. She spends half her month working on stuff for you and doing all the other stuff that she has to do on the coastal. The real thing that really eats our time, your stuff, when we do have to collect all that's a time eater. And these biology studies for coastal development permit are big time because they take a whole year to get done, to look at each habitat. So she's spending a lot of time on it. But hey, if I can figure out a way with you guys how to lower the time it takes, I can lower the fees. So.
And if I may, regarding the historic information in the staff report, in my training for historic preservation, there are some standard state forms that are commonly used. Almost every jurisdiction I've worked with, except for this one, uses these standard forms regularly. And what's nice is the forms are developed by the state, so it's a cataloging of a historic structure. And Eleanor Sparrow's work very much underpins that analysis, but it's not complete. And I struggle especially with a property that has not even had Eleanor's assessment done, where we have no historic information. I really struggle with the applicant because I asked them to please complete these standard forms so that we have an idea of what historic resource are you altering? What does it look like? Can we put that into a record before we approve an addition or an alteration to the building? And the applicant or their agent says, I'm not spending my money that way. We're not providing that information. And it's really kind of, it breaks my heart because we don't get the cataloging of that structure. Some historic districts that I've worked for, before an alteration is required, one of the board members and the property owner and a professional photographer come out and document the building in black and white slides or photographs that are given to the historic library of that town. And we don't do that either. You know, we allow these alterations, but we don't keep a record of the structure's history.
Okay,
Yeah, I just want to make the observation after listening to some of these discussion about fees is when we look at the previous discussion, which was talking about painting and applying for an application to paint your house, what the discussion is saying, from what I've heard, if staff time is $90 an hour that the applicant is being charged for, then every applicant in town that is applying for a painting permit is buying 10 hours of staff time, whether they use it or not, at $900. And I guess I question, does a painting permit at the MHRB require 10 hours of staff time to prepare a board packet for you guys to talk about paint?
Ed?
On that same idea, a sign, almost every business, every commercial structure in town has had a sign. And so we're generally talking about replacement signs. There aren't any new ones
That's
coming
what
up.
I was feeling, that it's already been done and
The Compass Rose sign's been up
documented.
there for a long time. If it wants to be
Why
Compass
do you
Rose
have to
tacos,
rehash what the prior boards have done? I agree.
Okay.
if you will. So if I want to change this, the name on my shop, it's already be in the same location. There's a very little, you know, I am all in favor of the review process. You should have a say because it's an ugly sign I'm going to put up and you'll convince me to change my name. But the staff shouldn't have that much work to do. You don't need to go back in history and find out that in 1961 there was a big brouhaha about my building being a laundromat. To laundromat or no laundromat. It's not pertinent to that particular thing. What we're talking about is, does that sign detract from the historic structure that it sits upon? That's for you to decide. And I think it should go right back to make sure that the drawings are clear, accurate, and in scale. Then you can make that decision. And I have to remember, every time we talk about cost recovery, average businesses in this town are somewhere around $120,000 a year. That's $1,200 to the county every year. So you made a lot of money on my side, because that was done 37 years ago. So in the long run, these signs pay for themselves. And I think that if you just look at it for how much money you're spending today, that's pound foolish. So we really, again, fees. And I know that's not your thing. I want it on the record so that record can go to the Board of Supervisors. And that's where we will have that discussion.
Yeah, that's the only place it's meaningful.
But it has to be here first.
Norman Duvall for the record. Might there be some duplication? Bear and Stebbins were cataloging the town of Mendocino back in the 60s. And that historical research is in Kelly House, building by building by building by building. Is the county recreating what already exists? Is the county using?
I have to speak to that because my house was built in 1882 and I went into the Kelly house and there was exactly one piece of paper on it and they're like, no kidding. Everybody missed your house. That's why there's no sign to say the year it was built. It was built in 1882. I got that from the assessor's office, but nobody knows anything about it.
So how does the county then find that history?
But why is the county responsible for finding that history? Is there a state requirement? Lee Edmondson. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm interrupting. Is the county required to document any undocumented historic structure? You mentioned something of a state form?
No,
No?
it'd be great if you would volunteer to do it.
Take them on.
It's a lot of work. I've done documentation on that sort of thing. Public sharing, may I speak to the public? May I speak to Mr. Lee? Look at, I'm even breaking my own rules when I told you.
I know.
You better slap me.
They're your rule.
All right.
Yeah.
Rick Sachs, one of the things that I see happening is somebody rents a store and they're paying for all the historic documentation in that building. Wouldn't it be better to find some way where the property owner could provide that documentation instead of the person that's opening a little shop needing to pay the $900 to do all that documentation?
I'd like to speak to that. Mayor?
Sure.
I'd like to speak to that, Rick, is at this point, I would say most of the businesses are not owned by the property owners. The property owner has a little line of a signature that they have to sign when the tenant wants to get a sign, and I know, because I went through this.
Yeah.
If they were given the burden that you have to provide documentation for your building to get this sign through, I don't think that they would do it. They would just say, no, I'm not gonna sign it then.
It'd be done once.
But maybe they didn't want to do it once even.
Okay.
I don't know,
I can tell you what's happening. Basically, you keep raising fees, people stop, they start looking for loopholes. The loophole with the signage, and Rick can probably tell you about this, the cost of making a sign out of natural materials, custom made, within the 6 square feet on Main Street, smaller on the back of the building, half of that. People can put signs in their windows made out of any materials in any kind of graphic style, as long as it doesn't exceed 42% of the square footage of the fenestration. And they can do whatever they want. And that's what's happening in the district. It doesn't change the architecture, the physical exterior of the building, but it changes the color and the graphic look of the district, because it can do it inside the shop without any restrictions. The same thing goes on with any kind of maintenance. There's probably a lot of maintenance that goes on that reaches the outside of the building. Trim replacement, water damage, repairs. That goes on, no one pulls a permit for it. Some of this is just very minor, it's just really maintenance and it's trying to blend in with what's there. It would pass the bar, but these fees.
I'd like to speak to this because it's not us making the fees, and that is
No, I
what's
know
really
that, I'm
upsetting.
speaking to the
And
general.
we've written letters to the board of supervisors.
You're trying to
We got
maintain
no
the historic
response,
district,
so.
and I'm telling you.
We understand what's happening.
We
We do understand what's happening.
Correct.
We understand what's happening. We understand why it's happening. Thank you. Mr. Greer.
Chairman, I just want to correct you, they don't make fees, if the board does
No,
not
I
have
understand that
any,
totally.
but I want everybody to understand, they have no authority over fees, they can make recommendations.
And
to
we're
the board.
volunteers, by the way.
You can all make recommendations to the board of supervisors when they do their budget or fees, but they don't set fees.
All right, are there any other public comments? Okay, may I make a suggestion to the board?
Thank you, Grant.
Please.
From what I gather, there is, I think what I'm hearing through the tea leaves is that there may be an opportunity to save some staff time on some applications, such as paint and signs in particular. Others, such as work on existing structures, maybe new structures, may deserve more staff time, perhaps as much staff time as being put in now. But is there, I'm hearing that there should be a distinction in the kinds of historic reporting that we're receiving and that you're putting time into providing us between different kinds of applications. Is that right?
Yes.
So would it be worthwhile for some member of the board to go back through prior reports and pull out model staff reports for signs, color, new development, changes to existing structures, on category 1 versus non-historic structures, so that we break down these so that we don't apply one standard kind of historic information across the board, because I do think there are some applications that frankly, I think we should be receiving a lot of information on. That's our job, for God's sake. But on the other hand, the paint and the signs and everything, I completely understand and completely agree with what I'm hearing, which is that, you know, these signs have already been approved probably a dozen times over the last 20 years. Is that something that the board would support? Or do I have a
Yeah,
volunteer
well, except for
to?
that, yeah, who's gonna volunteer? I don't have the time. That's where I got stuck was, you said a board member. I got stuck right there. That's where I got stuck.
I can, if you'd like to do that, we do have all of the staff reports available in the office, so we could come by one afternoon, be happy to work with them.
Can I address one more?
No.
I'll do it.
I'd like to address one more thing here is, at this point, it was my understanding about 2 years ago when we voted for signs to become a consent item, that would reduce staff time because they wouldn't have to do all the background. It was going to be a consent item. That was, when we voted for that, that's kind of what I thought we were voting for was, oh, great, well, it's a consent item and we can take it off the consent calendar and discuss it as a board item, or we can have it as a consent item. And further, I know of at least 3 businesses in town right now, 3 new businesses, that they're just not gonna get a sign. They can't afford the sign. I think if you reduce the fees, you're gonna be making more money. Because these people aren't even applying. You've got fiddleheads and the shoe shop, and yeah, they're just not gonna have a sign. And I don't think it's fair to the business owners. I don't think it's fair to the public that comes to visit this town, that they're walking by a business, they don't know what it is because there's no sign. It's because I think that you will actually increase your revenue if you make the fees more reasonable.
Deidre, if I could comment on your point.
Yeah, please.
I think it's not fair to the historic district itself, because when we don't have signs, we are losing the historic character of the community. If you have signs in a window, as was talked about, that takes away from the historic character of our community. And the fact that people will apply, again, because of
I've heard of a couple people who
because
say
I
they afford
understand.
$650 fee.
Yeah,
That's more than the painting the sign,
absolutely.
so.
Okay, that's necessary with this group.
Okay, I'll volunteer to come back. Not the next meeting, the one after that. July, with 4, 5, or 6 different kinds of typical project applications, and what the board can take a look at those and consider what should be included in them based on past reports.
And again, if I could, so bring like a new building, bring a new sign one, color.
Well, yeah, actually, I agree. I mean, thank you, Jared. I totally forgot. 2 years ago, when we did the whole consent item for signs, I thought that the motivation was exactly that there would no longer be necessity for, it's just for staff work because they're on consent.
They're on a consent calendar.
If we voted to take it off the consent calendar, we would need the information. But otherwise.
Maybe not. Usually when we vote to take it off the consent calendar, it's because it's a naked lady or something. I mean, we haven't really had to take too many off. Well, it was the yes, you know what I'm talking about.
Tattoo.
Right, tattoo. It was, that it was discussed. The spread eagle is what it was, or flying eagle, or whatever the tattoo shop was. But that was just because of the visuals. It wasn't because we needed to look at the history of the building.
Right.
It still doesn't. I really did think that when we moved it to consent calendar, I really thought, oh great, this is gonna reduce the staff time because it's a consent item.
Okay.
I mean, right?
Do we have agreement on that one? All right. Moving on.
So, okay.
10,
Can you update us on the fees too? Because.
well, can we just stick to the agenda? Because I think we are getting to something like that.
Why did you get the same
I
hours?
got pulled this off the bread.
Um,
Okay, public meetings, discussion regarding alternatives to fielding questions from the public. I think that came kind of from staff that
I think perhaps this item was suggested so that we could talk about meeting forum and decorum during the meeting.
and I think what we have.
And I think tonight you did a great job, and I blew it. Because one of the things, I run meetings too, just like you guys do. And, typically you open the matter up, Rich Schultz, planning director, you then, you let the staff present the staff report summary, then you pull your applicant up, then you open it for public comment, then you close public comment. And what I've noticed in the meetings is you have this constant barrage of questions from the public after you've shut down public comment, and it makes for a very disjointed meeting. It's hard to track where conversations are going. I understand you want it to be like a community meeting too. I've talked to some of the members of the community about it and understand but it really makes for a confusing meeting for me. I've just never had meetings like that happen. And I understand what the motivation is, but it's not fair to you when you're trying to make a organized meeting, take all sides, but then it's not fair to the applicant either. It's not even, I read your rules of order, it's not allowed in your rules of order. So, I've got them right here, I read them. So, it's in my car, feverishly reading them. But anyway, I'm just suggesting it to make for a much smoother meeting. And I'm open. I love public discussion. I love the intensity of meetings. I really do love it, or I wouldn't be here. So, and I love historic districts too. We'll get back to that in my comments. So anyway, I just brought it up it makes for a much smoother meeting. I hope you do that. But you run the meeting, Dan, or whoever's the chair here in the board. But it makes for a very chaotic meeting for me. And I know for Julie and Juliana.
I understand chaos.
Name.
This is different sometimes because sometimes there will be knowledge from the audience, and it may be something that they know from past experiences, and the board member may not have known that. And so after you have shut off the public input, the board seems to go in a completely different direction. They start talking about things that are not facts as you know them. They're not facts as the newspaper has reported, whatever it is. And it's like to not participate in that is, we might as well stay home. And that's what basically happens. And I'm not saying that the audience is constantly trying to correct the board. It's just that when you start off with a simple statement of this is the plan, this is what he wants to do, and everybody says, anybody have anything? But you say, looks good to me, and then all of a sudden it starts going a different direction. And now you've given up your right to speak to that direction. That's where it has a problem for me.
And, after they speak, you guys like to speak back.
Yeah, I just, Harold has, I'd just like to make the comment that the board is in fact governed by Sturgis Rules of Order, and Sturgis really does lay out very, very comprehensive and sensible ways for the board to deal with public comment and an orderly process in which to do so. And I guess I would just encourage the board to review that area of Sturgis, and as you're running the board, try to adhere as closely as you can to the rules of order that you're operating under.
Lee Edmondson for the record. What we have progressively less and less of in this town is an institutional memory. And we don't have, we're losing people who remember back when. And to amplify on Ed's point, I'm looking at two gentlemen here, three gentlemen, four, been around a long time, have attended a lot of MHRB meetings and have a repository of institutional information. And I think it would be a disservice to this board and to this community to so rigidly enforce a formality as to prevent that institutional memory and judgment to be shared. We brought this up in the meeting that we had with Director Schultz, and he agreed. This is our forum, and it doesn't run strictly on Amtrak time. And if we lose that flexibility, we lose the ability to be heard. And that's one of the things that got really frustrating years ago when people felt they were not being heard. And when people feel that they're not being heard, they either get frustrated and angry or they give up. So I'm saying keep within the rules with flexibility. You got to play it by ear.
Just one last observation, Ed O'Brien. Basically, I'm not kidding about it. I understand from your point, I was chair. It is difficult to run this meeting. It's a lot easier now than it used to be. We used to have a lot of lawyers here, and they do everything, and they were going to blow everything by you. So what you see now seems to be something, but it has worked for this many years. We still have people who want to come here. We still have people who want to buy here, and we do fight it out here. And if it seems a little chaotic, price you pay.
I disagree with everybody that just spoke. I think they are twisting the meeting, twisting you. It's wrong. You should be open, and it's not fair to your applicants when the public can continue and to add comments. And I would really love it if Ed or Lee or Rick or any of the other people here that have the experience to please put in an application to be on the board. With your knowledge, you could really help the other board members.
They have to live in the historic district.
Yeah. But Ed does. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but just, and you know what? There's nothing stopping you when you see the agenda to talk to the board members. You can't ask them for their vote, or it's a serial meeting and they can't vote on it. If I hear that, I will call foul on that. But you can talk to them individually. You can have more than two. You know that, Ed. But I think it's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong. You're creating a chaotic forum. And if we get challenged legally, I don't know that I can defend it. So it's not fair. You don't see it in any other. I've never seen it in 3 other jurisdictions. I've never seen anything like this before.
Okay, let me just ask. Is the primary problem in your eyes the porous nature of closing the hearing? In other words,
Yeah,
is that the biggest thing that
never
troubles
had
you?
a public comment here.
Okay.
And I broke it. You caught me. I broke it. I started falling into their ways. And
So
see,
You become Indonesian.
I've become but no, it's not fair to the board or the council or that's making a decision.
Yeah.
For this just constant barrage of information. You didn't get this, you didn't get that. That's what her job is to get the information to her, to get it to you. And you're supposed to ask all 3 groups their information. Then you're supposed to alone make your decisions and make your motions. That's right in your rules of order. That's in Robert's rules of order. I read your rules of order. I thought it was going to be something different than Sturgis. I read Sturgis. It's very little difference from Robert's rules of order. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
So let me just ask board members, if I could, their perspective on the principal culprit here, which is the lack of clarity when it comes to closing the public hearing. Is that something that is a concern to you, or just keep it the way it's been for a while, for so long, or what?
I don't think it's a big concern for me. I think some flexibility is needed, and I appreciate that there are a number of people who come to this meeting who have a lot of historical memory with regard to the issues before this board, certainly more than mine, and I appreciate hearing from them.
So I'm new to this board, but I spent 9 years on the Fairfax Design Review Board in Marin. And the years that we adhered to that same structure, things, in my opinion, went a lot smoother. You have the staff report, you have the applicant present their application. So you have the staff report, you close it. You have the applicant present, you close it. You have the public talk to that issue with all institutional knowledge they have, and then you close it, and then you bring it to the board. And you don't, the more you have dialogue directly between board members and the public, the more chaotic it becomes, and it tends to go on for a lot longer than needed. And I agree with Brent, it's not fair to the applicant, because you have your time, you say your mind. Those who have a wonderful historical basis here should present their thoughts, and then it comes back to the group of people who are supposed to make the decision. So, sorry, I disagree. But that's my prior experience on other boards.
Okay, well, I found Mendocino residents to be sort of like herding cats. And I've never been to a meeting where the rules were strictly followed, but I've appreciated the knowledge, and sometimes it does come in a little after because, say, the applicant will speak and then say something new that can be disputed, so then it's allowed me to take in more information. It sounds good on paper, I think, but I've never seen it here. And this is my 4th year. 4 years on this board, so, I don't know. To me, I mean, it sounds good, but.
Was staff going to provide us some alternatives for fielding these questions, or is it just gonna be board discussion?
It was just for discussion.
Okay.
I'd like to point also, Dan, Brent Schultz, my director, it's not like our public here doesn't get a chance to speak. They get public expression, they get every item that goes before you that you're gonna make a vote on. They get a chance to talk, but just this unwieldy, just flowing discussion, I just don't think it's fair to the applicant, and it doesn't follow any decorum for any other boards, or any rules of order I've ever seen.
I have no idea, everyone, if I'm out of order by speaking right now. But the idea that we are being unfair to the applicant as the #1 issue bothers me. Because if there is a mistake, if a lawyer is present and he is presenting his legalese, and you don't believe that it's right, and you're supposed to just simply sit there, why come? Why be here? And I will emphasize that yes, it is every once in a while chaotic, but I think that what you're seeing is a period in this historical review board's life that is brought on by an unworkable situation between the county planning department, the county of Mendocino, and the review board. One is trying their best to be fair and equal, and the county is trying to get as much money out of this town as they possibly can for everything. And so therefore, there are violations that are not being addressed. There are people who are not getting what they want, and you're talking about some frustration from the townspeople. And I don't believe that when you're talking about that kind of stuff, that the applicant should be the #1 person.
Norman DeWall for the record. Very briefly, I want to reiterate and repeat the words Municipal Advisory Council. The one in Wallala has been working for over 20 years. The public has an opportunity to help put the agenda together, bring community discussions to a forum so they can be heard, be discussed. Why doesn't Mendocino have one? Mendocino County, Mendocino, the town of, has been turned into a cash cow for the county. The taxes collected here, the regulations imposed, the restrictions in place are killing this town. And we want people to come and enjoy and participate and feel good here. But listen to the people who are here, and you're hearing it and saying it yourselves. The fees are just too high because the fees are expected to pay for all of the expenses of the Department of Planning and Building Services. Why is that fair? It's just not fair. That's the issue, and that's why people speak out as much and as often as they do. Thank you.
By the way, Brett, you know Norm was our 5th district supervisor.
Yeah, to
For many, how many years? Many, 16 years, thank you.
Okay, so,
Thank you for your service.
before we move on to the next,
Okay, please. I was here when Robert Lee Edmondson, for the record. Robert Schmidt was here with a big project. He was the only applicant to my knowledge. He was first at bat, and we followed that exact same procedure. And it went orderly, it was fair, it was honest, and it was efficient. And you can't have the machine run. I've been over at the Board of Supervisors and it runs like a machine. And look at the quality of decisions the Board of Supervisors has made over the past 6 to 8, 10 years. If you try to run government like a machine, government has to have a human face. It has to have a human voice.
okay, before we move on, let me just, because I've successfully worked the last 3 years at not being chair. Because I failed tonight, let me just give you 2 minutes of what you may want to expect from me, which is, I understand what you're saying, Brent. My past has been to work with small communities, as small as this one, and I have found that trying to suppress that kind of energy creates many more and more significant problems than a clean record to go on. So I will bring closure to public hearings. I will tell you that based on the time I've been on this board, I can tell you the 6 people that I can give you a 95% degree of certainty will be the violators of the problem. So I'm asking those 6 people, some of whom, the majority of whom are actually in the room now, but not all of them, to try to help control the situation. Because I do appreciate their point of view. It's a point of view that I don't have and nobody else on the board has either. And actually, to be honest with you, from the moment I started this board, I found the biggest problem is that I wish more people from the community would come and attend and participate and bring down the gavel and saying, public hearing is no more, we're not going to listen anymore. That is not the way to encourage more people from the community to attend these meetings. And to me, that probably is the most important thing we can do, is have more people at these meetings. And if it means letting Lee get up and mostly his fault, but not always. I mean, that, to me, that's a small price tag. But I do ask those people to try to control the problem that Brent has rightly pointed out. We do need to try to be a little bit more, the record needs to be a little cleaner for the benefit of us and the applicant. All right. Can we talk about MHRB meetings with no applications? Just as way of background, I think most people that care about this issue know this, but I don't know if Brent does. There was a case about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, where this board unanimously, when told there would not be a meeting the following week for lack of applications, this board unanimously told staff that we wanted to have a meeting and these would be the agenda items. The board appointed by the Board of Supervisors directed staff that we would have a meeting, and we were told, again, the board appointed by Board of Supervisors were told by staff that we would not. And I think that really lit a fuse. I think that really lit a fuse in a lot of our bonnets about who is running the show. We weren't asking for staff time. We weren't even asking for staff attendance. We wanted a meeting because we had things to talk about. And we were told, after unanimously saying that we wanted the meeting, we were told by staff that we weren't going to have a meeting.
We did want it to be noticed.
We did want it to be noticed, that's correct. Right. So I think that's kind of what lit the fuse.
That is.
And that was an outrage that caught me off guard, that's for sure. I hadn't really appreciated just how out of control the situation we got until that time. So, I don't know if other members of the public or other board members want to talk about that, but that's where it came. Okay.
Ed O'Brien, he's absolutely right. You can trace it right down to that. We have not solved that problem. We have not solved who's in charge of the MHRB. And I think that when the staff is appointed, when the staff does what they think is the best thing for the next agenda, or the staff thinks that we don't need a meeting, you were actually at a meeting, sir, and you said, I'll bring that back to you, I'll bring that back to you, all these different problems. And we said, and I heard the chair say, next month, and you said, staff says, no, we don't have another paid person to have a reason for it. Yet all the things that we brought up were valid. They're on this piece of paper now, some of them. And that's exactly what's going on.
Norman Duvall, for the record, if there isn't an agenda, please let them sit as a municipal advisory council and address the other issues in the community.
Please.
Concur with what Ed and Norman said, and my understanding from Peg Levy-Brown is that the county books this room for the first Monday in every month. And according to Peg Levy-Brown, that money's not refundable. Now, if you've already paid the money, and this is my reasoning, if you've already paid the money and the group wants to get together and invite it for discussion only, nothing actionable, for discussion only, like we're doing tonight right here. This is a wonderful forum for people to express themselves and to communicate with the members of the government if they so choose to show up. A volunteer could record, you don't have a secretary per se, but somebody could take notes on what was discussed and points were made, submit that to staff, get some communication going, so that it no longer feels like it's a top-down operation, Ukiah to Fort Bragg to us. But it's a circular communication flow among equals. Good idea, great idea.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment, in reflecting back to my years on the board and the 3 years that I was president of the board, I was never under the impression that staff thought that they could overrule or ignore the decisions and requests of the board. Staff was serving the board to provide the board with the necessary information and to record the minutes. But certainly if the board made a decision, staff did everything they could to help fulfill that decision. Something has changed in the last, 10 years. And the change has not been for the better. The board is running the meetings. The board is making, from my perspective, the board should be making the decisions and staff should be implementing, not circumventing those decisions.
Do other board members have?
For the record. You want me to speak?
Well, I mean, you ought to have
Is
your.
public comment, Brent Schultz, my director, chairman, is board comment closed?
Almost, I guess we have one more.
And
Just one more, and the other record.
You mentioned something earlier that was voted on by the board. It was a consent calendar, kind of a concept.
Signs.
For the signs. And you had acted on that as a board, and it went to staff and went nowhere. That's exactly.
No, that's not
No,
true.
no, that's not
I thought you
The
said
signs
that.
are, no, the signs are now on a consent calendar.
Then why
However,
The question is, why are they
The
costing so much if
fees
it's on
still
consent?
went way up.
It's like,
So why did fees go up to whatever they are?
But if it's on a consent calendar, why isn't it on this agenda?
There's no
no
signs.
signs.
But there's no category, no application.
Oh, well, that's just, I mean,
It's like, it's like the thing that matters from the board. That was the suggestion I had with John
right.
in conversation. Look at any other agenda of any, other
We're
organization.
gonna be talking about fees, and then he's gonna be talking about.
Yeah.
fees.
Okay, so, public hearing such as it is, it's closed, and does staff want to maybe respond and give us some
As long as
guidance?
they can't speak anymore.
Yes.
Brent Schultz. All right, okay. I'm the new sheriff, not the sheriff, the planning and building sheriff.
Deputy
And
Chair.
I did, when I got here, said I would work with you, and I have worked with you to get more things on the agenda. I'm sorry if I misspoke to some of the members of the community about coming back to the next meeting. Right now, your job is designed, not for a community, a municipal advisory council, to discuss all kinds of issues. It's very, look at your zoning code here that you've done. It's beautiful, it's a nice historic plan, but it's very focused on design and any changes to the historic district. I am willing to bring those and try to make them more efficient, work on the staff report, have more items come forward to you. I don't want to discourage people, I really don't think I'm going to be discouraging people from coming, but I just don't think this is the best forum for it. I don't have, I was going to say this more in my plan director comments, but we have a $6.8 million overall budget for the entire county, right, for planning and building. There's all kinds of stuff in there. If you want to come to my office or talk about it on the phone, I'll go over it. We're bringing in about $4.67 million a year in fees. We're subsidized $2 to $2.5 million a year, depending on, now that we've got cannabis within us.
And another 2.5.
It's like 2.7 total. But the board has, my history that they've told me is they've subsidized, and that's not uncommon for planning and building departments to be like 70% funded. You'll hear every city council and board say, we're gonna be full cost recovery. They never get there. Because there's time where she is at the counter and we can't charge people, where she's explaining, or other people in our staff. We just, there's other people in the audience who were very high up in city government, and they can vouch for me that none of them quite get there. But I don't have unlimited staffing. You don't know how much it pains me when you guys want to do stuff, and I don't have the firepower to turn and do it. We are down still half at that Fort Bragg office. I have, one staff member with serious medical issues, and I think you know about that one, with her family members, who is not here all the time. I have no manager for the office. I implored the supervisors at the last meeting, if you know anybody, and I would leave it to, if anybody in this audience knows a good manager who's retired, who could come work for us, we'll teach him the local codes. I'd love for him to come out of the weeds and talk to me. So that's something I really need. I want somebody here who they can run the meetings and I don't have to come here. I'm gonna keep coming till I feel like everybody is feeling, and I'm not gonna make everybody happy out here with our zoning code, because that's what it is. You guys adopted this thing. But I'm trying to come up with ways like the color palette and other ways where we can try to make things go faster. I hope you see I'm trying to lower the costs that way. I'm never gonna totally agree with you guys on fees, and I'd love to go to lunch with you or after 5 o'clock. talk to you about that.
That would be a violation of the Brown Act.
Yeah, but I can meet the two of you. I can meet the two of you at a time. Or I can meet as many of them as I want to. And believe me, I like them. They're fun people. But understand, I just can't put everything on there. And there's some meetings where we just don't have the staff and time to do it. And I'm not gonna say I'm gonna stop everything from coming here. That's not my intent. And I'm sorry if people were offended by the former directors here. But I just, you guys, we don't have all the staff where we can be here. Every time you're here, it's not just the payment for this meeting hall. It's having the staff, it's noticing the meeting. You know, I've got a whole admin team that does that over there, and they're tracking that. She doesn't do that. So there's costs that get involved with doing this thing. Maybe what you guys ought to look at is a map. You know, all it takes is the board approving a map and use this space. You can do it yourself. You have to, you know, you can do your own meeting minutes and discuss anything you want to discuss. It's advice, you know, it's set up. If you read that resolution, I'm working right now with Supervisor Hashik on the Covelo map. I've gone to 2 of their meetings. They're trying to set up their map. Maybe that's what, you know, you can talk to Supervisor Williams. But that taking this board and morphing it into it's almost like you want it to be a neighborhood council, and you're not a neighborhood council. I understand why you want to do it.
Well, this is an unusual night because all of a sudden we have all this. The report I got in the mail is abbreviated. I should have printed it out from the internet. But we have all these conversation pieces. We don't normally do this.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get things figured out.
Yeah, and I want to keep talking about it till we get it figured out.
But we're not asking if we want to do it without the support of staff.
Well, you got a little problem. The zoning code says we're supposed to be here every time we have a meeting. So we're supposed to keep minutes.
Okay.
We're supposed to advertise the minutes.
Okay.
So anyway, but again, I just, not to belabor this discussion, I am gonna work with you guys on agenda items. Julia's gonna be working on that with the staff that are in Fort Bragg when the issues come in. You know, if we don't have any items to discuss, I really don't want to have a meeting because I have to pay overtime for it. And I have to pay overtime for, you know, I don't charge it, even though I can, I'm not. For my time here, I feel like as a director, that's my responsibility. But it does, and then if I have, you know, I've got Trent sitting back there waiting to give you the code and what we're paying for him too.
Is this the time we can talk about the fees, or?
I'm gonna talk about that in direct comments. And there can be no comments from the public. until after the meeting. Then I'll stay as long as they want me to.
Okay. All right. I'm sure we got anywhere on that, but.
Can we go to code enforcement update? Whatever. Because I want Trent to give an update.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Great.
I want you all to meet Trent Taylor. He is our code enforcement manager. I'm really,
Code enforcement manager.
before I got here, I had 35 code enforcement officers, and I have five. I have 5. And I had 48 square miles, and I had 35, and I have 3,500 square miles, and I have 5. I was like, how are we gonna do this, Trent? But Trent does a great job, and I'll turn it over to Trent to kind of give a summary of the program, the supervisor's goals, objectives, a little bit about what he's seeing in your community on code enforcement complaints.
Okay, so thank you, board, for having me. Trent Taylor, I'm the code enforcement interim manager for code enforcement in Mendocino County, working for Branson Planning and Building. A little history, I wanted to give just a brief history on what's happened over just the last 3 years in code enforcement. I've been involved there since 2015. And we started out when I came over to the county to do some analytical work for the director. I retired out of local government. We had 2 code enforcement officers inland and 1 on the coast. That was it, 3 for the entire county. One of those was Angie Hamilton, which some of you probably knew. Angie, you know, would be in Mendocino a lot. She lived on the coast. She was out of the Fort Bragg office. She ultimately became the supervisor of the unit, and then she also did code work. So now we have, when Angie retired, we promoted a supervisor. That person's inland at Ukiah because the majority of our work is the inland part of the county. I'll give you some percentages here shortly. we also expanded our unit with the advent of cannabis. And prior to that, the Board of Supervisors, when I came in, I started attending board meetings, and they gave 4 distinct directives of code enforcement in Mendocino County. They were very hot at that point in time. That's part of the reason that the former director brought me in, was that they wanted to get some priorities done. And so their priorities were, at that time, and that's 2016, environmental degradation was number 1. Well, first of all, overall of that was health and safety issues. So public health, life safety issues, people living in bad conditions that are life-threatening. And then the 4 main priorities were environmental degradation, illegal grading, pond development. There was a lot of stuff going on, there still is in this county. And then they wanted stopping work on all unpermitted construction jobs. And that was a huge problem inland. We had some lobby groups lobbying the Board of Supervisors for that. And then they wanted us abating nuisances from major corridors, visible corridors. And the last one was working more closely with the state to build and strengthen a culture of compliance in the construction trades in Mendocino County. Those are the 4 major priorities above life safety. That was in 2016. 2017 comes, they're developing the cannabis ordinance in Mendocino County. Planning and building was peripherally involved in that, and code enforcement had no involvement. I came out of law enforcement, I could see that there was probably going to be some issues here because we're changing from a criminally illegal thing to a regulatory problem. And so, of course, in the spring of 2017, they called me in, we worked to develop a strategy for dealing with the code enforcement related to cannabis, which is huge. So our call volume, our complaints per year doubled in less than, immediately, because we added cannabis. We're running about 600 complaints a year countywide, 300 of them are cannabis. I hired 2 more people that we primarily cannabis, everybody does everything, but 2 people were hired strictly for that. They spend all their time pretty much doing that. Got 1 code officer inland. I've got 1 infield position inland right now. I went through 2 people in the coastal office since Angie retired. The girl I have now is really good. She's out on maternity leave for probably the next several months. Yeah, but so what we do in that case is we send people over from Ukiah.
Angie was great. We liked Angie, actually.
We send people over from Ukiah, and the travel time kills us, but the travel time kills us all over this county doing code enforcement. So that's just the brief history. So then I get here, so I'm managing it as one of his division managers in the department. We have a supervisor that supervises the field operations, and then we've got 3 inland and 1 on the coast, or 4 inland and 1 on the coast. 2 of those inland are primarily cannabis. And I haven't had the 1 person that is the second inland general code enforcement officer who would be doing work like in the town of Mendocino if they were on the coast. I've had that position unfilled since the beginning. I've not filled that position. It's outflown again right now. We've went through people. We've always been 1 position down. And actually in last year's budget, the board cut that position and then gave it back to me. I didn't ask for it, just the way it happened. I don't have a lot of responsibility for the budget. The director does, but the director ultimately answers to the board on the budget. And when we go into hearings, as you might all know, it can go. I've done a lot of budget work in my previous life, and it's a dice roll. So let's talk about the town of Mendocino. I talked about our statistics and our complaints. We have 1 code enforcement that's allocated to cover the entire coast and all the coastal zone. And that is about 1,300 square miles of our entire county, which is about 34% of the county. The town of Mendocino itself is 7.2 square miles. That's about 0.5% of the entire area that person covers, or the entire county. The primary complaints we receive here in the historic district, and in the coastal zone. Coastal zone, a lot of coastal development without permits. That's our big cases. We have some really big cases, and then the second is substandard housing. We've got some huge cases going on right now. We just lost a life in one that we have noticed. And we're going to be hopefully taking that to court in the next few weeks. These take lots and lots of time, lots of investigative work to prove, because the burden is different than criminal law. We have to go and do deep dive inspections with lots of resistance, court orders, a lot of regulatory due process that, in my former life in law enforcement, I didn't have to deal with that much. So in the town of Mendocino, the primary complaints we get are unpermitted construction, but that's not the number one complaint. That's just the ones that we most frequently deal with. And then the other ones are things like signs in the windows, sandwich board signs on the street, parking issues, and that sort of thing. And I'll break that down in here in just a sec. So in 2018, we had 16 complaints out of the town of Mendocino, and I bet you all but about 2 of those were made by people that are sitting in this room right now. Because I don't know everybody personally, but I know everybody by name, and I've been listening for the last several hours. That's not saying that's a problem, but it's curious to me that a town, it's a small town, but I've actually been over here. I spent a couple weeks ago, I spent the entire afternoon walking around this town, looking at complaints, looking at violations, and talking to business people. And the information I got from that was interesting. That I talked about the problems that have been complained about and reported to me, and most of them said, "Why is that a big deal? Why do we even care?" I mean, because we don't. The town was vibrant and running. Just conveying what I heard. I'm not making a judgment on that. So we got 16 complaints in 2018, the calendar year. 4 of which we did administrative enforcement action on. That's where we either issued citations or notice of violations and ultimately got compliance. And the other 12 were resolved because we interacted with the people and they came into compliance by either coming in and doing a permit for MHRB, or they didn't need one, or there was some other circumstance. 2019 to date, interesting, we're halfway through the year, 16 complaints. And most of those came in over the last 2 months. 4 of which we've taken administrative enforcement action to gain compliance. And then 11 we're investigating currently, and we may end up closing some. We're having some difficulty. One of the things that Angie told me, because I worked directly with her doing analytical work when I first came in, is that she would spend some time down here and go around and she'd get compliance for people putting sandwich board signs out. And there's a lot of them. I drove through the town before dark tonight before I came to this meeting. I do that every time I come over here. And there's a lot of them. And some of those people are people that you all know. Some of them are people that maybe you don't, but it seems to me everybody kind of knows everybody here. We can go tell them to knock it off, and they take the signs in, and then 2 weeks later, they're all back out again. And I don't know what the solution to that is. I can't, is it fining all your business owners for putting the signs out? I don't know. We need to talk about that. So there's some issues, some of these more minor issues, when I'm dealing with life safety issues and the board of supervisors' priorities, that some of these things, we can only devote so much time to, but I will come, when we're here, we will come down. If we get something, if somebody's doing active construction without a permit or without MHRB approval, and we get the call instead of like 2 or 3 weeks later when it's already happened and it's done, and somebody calls and says, this happened and I got nothing to compare it to, but we'd rather catch them in progress, and we will respond to that. I'll send somebody from Ukiah right now while Gretchen's out. Not a problem. So over the last 2 years, the breakdown of types of complaints in the town of Mendocino are: the highest number of complaints has been for sidewalk or other types of business signs. That's the number 1 complaint in this town that code enforcement gets. The second highest is for aesthetic issues unique to the zoning historical district. Somebody painted a door the wrong color. Somebody changed the doors. But I had one just recently, the doors were changed. I went and looked at it. I don't know what they looked like before. I don't know what they compared to what, and when did it happen? No information, just the doors were changed, and so that was a problem. And then the other ones are for land use construction issues, and we've been really successful in noticing and getting compliance on those. We had the guy, some of you may know the person, I don't know his name, was putting horses where he's not supposed to have horses Zone A, and he bucked us. We ended up going to the mat on that one, and he removed.
Was that here?
Yeah, it was in Mendocino.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, when people don't, we have methods to make people comply, but the first thing we always do, is work with people to get them to comply. And so some of these more challenging minor issues like that, I realize that they're not minor to you, and I don't have a dog in the fight if somebody's got a beer sign in their window that lights up at night. But that is technically probably not allowed by the code, but how much time, what are we supposed to do? How do we stop that when people, I can go make them take it down and then they'll put it back up in 2 weeks. What do we do with that? Those are considerations that I have to look at in the scheme of my people covering this massive county with 5 people and trying to solve problems.
One of the things I want to add to the code operation here in the county, it's totally, and I know you said it, it's totally reactive. It's not it doesn't really have any proactive parts to it. We get calls, I call them my little code enforcement volunteers. And it's amazing in this county how many are out there. Not just here in town, they're all over the place. You'd be amazed the calls we get. They're grading over here in this canyon. And we go out there, sure enough, they're improper, and they just changed the whole stream, riparian stream bed, and diverted it up into a pond. And we got Fish and Wildlife involved and Water Board. And it's quite a process to get them for him to get compliant. You know, as much as I know people like us to take away people's property rights, we can't. We have to go to court and get court orders to force people to do things. And one of the things I'm proud to see here that under Trent's leadership, he's gotten an attorney. Now, they didn't have an attorney for him to work with on these cases. I had 3 to 5 attorneys at all times in the operations I was at in the past. You need them to go to court and get authority to make things happen and done. Now, maybe not on a sign or anything like that, but he does have some legal backing now, and he's looking at other things he can do to get more resources. But, you know, I heard this from a director one time. They said code enforcement is that operation. The people that called hate him because they don't think they're doing it fast enough. And the people that get called upon hate him too, because they don't want to deal with the code violations. And we're all wondering why Trent isn't getting done quicker. You know, and he just can't trample on people's property rights. And he's got a very good record so far. And I'm proud to say of just going out and talking to people and getting them to change. But we do have, you know, and you've seen it here. We've had people, inappropriately starting work and doing things. And again, we will send somebody out, and get them to come and look at them and write them up if we have to. Hopefully, we'll just tell them and they'll respond.
The best time to call us or complain is when it's
So
happening.
now, I have that question. If you saw something and it went up really fast, and all of a sudden there's something new, it's in your neighborhood.
I'd rather investigate.
Should you even bother? Maybe not even bother. That's what I'm
If we're going to look at that, I'd rather look at it as contemporaneous to the act as possible.
And Trent, how would you like people to contact your office? What are the ways they can contact you to put a complaint in?
We have a complaint system on our website that you can fill out a complaint, and it comes directly to mine and the supervisor's email. We process those every day. You can call the office, you can email me directly. Most everybody at the county's email address is their last name, first initial. Mine is taylort@mendocinocounty.org. And that's the best way. The worst way is to email Brent 10 things in a list, and then he gives it to me, and then I
I told him to do that.
I know, but that's the worst way.
See, he's mad at me.
I'm not mad at him. I'm just saying that people do that even when you didn't tell them to do that.
I know.
And so that doesn't, I have a system, and we try to do everything in code enforcement strategically in this county. That was not what was going on before I came here. And I'm not saying it's because of me, it's because we developed a system, and that we can handle the volume, and we can handle the response based on the priorities that the Board of Supervisors has given us. We are, like Brent said, we're 100% complaint driven. We are 0% proactive. We do not have the staffing resources that have been allocated to drive around looking for violations. If we did that, then it just is not possible. This county's too big. Yes, sir.
This board sent a letter to the preceding acting planning director and board of supervisors and having to do with enforcement and fees and how they're related to each other and cost recovery. And one of the points of the letter was perhaps the department should consider looking at, when they're looking at cost recovery, looking at a different kind of enforcement mechanism, the same way the CHP does. The CHP is the only state agency that doesn't get any general fund money. They are truly cost recovery. They're the only agency. And the reason they do it is not because they're a compliance agency. They ticket in order to support themselves. Now, there's a lot of compliance that goes into it, but as you know, by driving down 128, they're far from compliance. My question to you is, I understand that this is a decision that would have to be made before the supervisors, but from a programmatic level, the work you have to do day in and day out, what problems do you see if the Board of Supervisors said, you know what, not such a bad idea, MHRB, why don't we have an enforcement process in the town of Mendocino where you guys come in and rather than spending a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year to get compliance, you ticket them. So that if somebody, for example, has an unlawful sign, let's say 2 unlawful signs on their property, instead of sending them a letter saying you have 10 days to take it down, blah, 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 basically it's, you've got an unlawful sign, we saw it ourselves, you have 1 day to take it down, which is about 23 and a half hours longer than it's needed to take that sign down. And if you don't, it's $100 a day. We don't care if you leave your sign up. You can leave your sign up, but it's $100 a day. $100 a day. And you know where that money's gonna go? To help reduce fees.
Here, here.
What would be the problem? What would be the programmatic problem? I know that Board of Supervisors have a big nut to crack there in terms of getting to that point. But do you see a problem?
Well,
with using
the idea, I don't conceptually see a problem, but I do have experience in this. I ran a small parking district, and the parking district over time, it was a preservation district basically. The money that was generated from parking was supposed to go back into keeping the district vibrant, the business district vibrant. Over time, the fees the community polled and got no parking's free. So the 100% of the program revenues came from people violating the law. And so when I left there, it's still going on today, 100% of and so all of a sudden, if we're very effective at enforcement, our revenues will go away or diminish. With the highway patrol, a little different, you're right. I don't completely buy that they are not at all general funded, but, and I do know a little bit about that. So, but anytime you're using the fact that people violate rules to fund something 100%, you're better off not being effective at enforcing it because then you could go out and get fines and all this stuff. But the idea behind fines is a deterrent. And so what we're finding now, 3 years into our new program, we created a bunch of new laws that allowed us, we didn't have administrative citations 2 years ago. We created that. We didn't have a lot of these mechanisms to do things that we have now. And what we're finding is the word is getting out that, hey, when we come after you, we're coming hard and it's gonna cost you potentially a lot of money if you don't go along with the program. I agree with what you're saying, but unfortunately, we have to do some significant law change for the town of Mendocino. Because all your rules are based on the zoning code. And in California law, in order to enforce code enforcement for a zoning violation, you have to give them a 30-day notice to correct. So in the sign instance, they take it down, they complied, they put it back up. I can't just go sign them again, 30 days, it's a game. So perhaps a law, I'll talk to my attorney about it, perhaps we can have an exception for something. We had that kind of exception in the zoning code for the things unique to the historic district, something of that nature, I don't know if it's possible, then perhaps we could do that. And perhaps we could generate enough funding if the board would allocate a position to do that work, even part-time. Anything's possible, but I don't make personnel.
No, I'm just asking what the programmatic issues.
I can make anything work if I have the resources to do it.
Can I ask you, to speak about what is the process right now? So if you get a complaint, here comes the complaint, what happens next? You go out and you look at it.
We go out and look at it and talk to people.
It's, okay, and then you talk to them, and then what, a letter goes to them?
No, either we issue them a notice of violation or we don't. We don't do letters anymore. That's ancient history in Mendocino.
I didn't know that.
No, we issue notice of violations, and it's a 30-day notice to correct as required by state law and our county ordinance. And if you don't comply, then you get a citation for a zoning or building violation.
So does that go to, say, the business owner, or does that go to the property owner?
It would go to the property.
The property owner?
Absolutely. So if you're renting a business downtown Mendocino, the property owner's that's the only person I can hold accountable. I could cite I could notice up and cite the renter, but I have no leverage. Because if they don't pay and we fine them, the only leverage I have is on the property.
So why do we have these enforcement actions that go on? I'm not exaggerating here. They go on for 6, 9, 12 months.
Yeah, no, I've got a list years ago.
I'll give you an example. 2 egregiously unlawful signs over on Rotary Park were up there for a year.
When was that?
Starting in February of last year to February of this year.
Did you make the complaint?
Yep.
You made a complaint?
Well, I took a picture of it, I sent it in.
To who? I've never heard of
You
that.
filled out a code complaint form.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But they did take it down.
After a year, that's my point though. After
Success, Dan. That's good for
Well,
work.
what I can say is we're working on our efficiency measures to get people to comply quicker. I've only been doing this a couple of years.
But if I could add to this, because I did it for 17 years before the courts right now are really coming down on cities for punitive fines on code enforcement. A lot of cities were, and I'll admit I got kind of punitive on stuff, and the court slapped us and said that is way beyond what the violation was, and so they've people have had to pull back on some of the fines, but they are still collecting fines. But then you got to collect it, and the problem is sometimes people skip.
Yeah, but his question was compliant. Why is the sign still up? I didn't even know about it. That's not in the 16 things that I talked about, because I pulled all 16 logged in complaints. Before I came here, they weren't even logging in complaints. So there could have been 100 complaints made here, and nobody. I would get a call from somebody and say, "Hey, we complained about this, and we're really frustrated because nothing's happening." I go, "Where's the complaint?"
They didn't track it.
Nobody tracked it. We track every complaint in this county now, and that's why we can deal with it.
But we have to be careful on those fines, and you and Mike are tracking that.
Right, but if I go out and tell somebody to take down the sign, first I gotta find the person responsible for it. I don't know this situation. If it's a park or something,
It's the Rotary Club.
Right.
They're everywhere.
How do I hold the Rotary Club accountable?
They have a president and everybody.
I know, but that's not that's a pretty arm's reach relationship.
Actually, they don't remember.
I got it.
I'm gonna talk to him after this meeting.
Sure, and I agree that,
A year.
yeah,
Lee, I'm going after.
I got cases in,
And these, not small signs, big signs.
yeah.
2 of them.
Well, there's a lot of signs in this town.
I'm really confused because I don't know when it changed. The code enforcement rules that I have from 2012 was a completely different.
It's completely changed.
It's completely changed. I'd like to get an update on what the new thing is, because this is, if you're in violation, you'll be issued a notice to appear citation.
No.
You're assessed by the court. See, this is the thing, it's really nice that you're here to talk to us about it, but this is what I'm going on, because this is all I have. I'd like to get a current, can you get us, the board, a current
I
copy
just
of?
told it, we talk to people to get compliance. If they don't comply, we issue them a notice of violation. And if they don't abide by the notice of violation, they get a
Do you
citation.
have something in writing?
But
Do you
does
have
it
a policy-
go on
policy
a
written?
lien? There's no policy writing? Wow.
Oh, I think I'm gonna be
I mean,
like,
at
for
least
these people.
this one was like, at least in writing.
Yeah, but most cities do, that's a typical city one.
Well,
They send a
Well, what is,
letter.
how much is the violation?
starts at 100, goes up to 500 a day.
And how do you discern which, a day?
Yeah.
And how do you discern what's 100 and what's 500?
First offense 100, second offense 200, third offense 500.
And that's right in.
That's
the-
in state law. And
The
well,
day?
our policy, yes, our policy is by way of ordinance. It's
So
not,
now if they don't pay, does it become a lien on their property?
we'll take them to court and get a judgment against them.
But I'm trying to figure out how to own their property.
No, we can leave the
No, because on the
property.
2012, they did.
Yeah.
And
They
that's
used to
kind of what
lien-
I
they
was
used to
going
lien
on, that's what I
penalties.
thought.
We can't have any
Yes.
penalties in this county.
You're dropping us.
Yeah, we don't do, so everything, we didn't have administrative penalties before. Criminal citations, they
All right, so
never.
this is
they-
like gone
I
with
know
the wind.
it's
All
sad.
this stuff has gone with
They
the wind.
never
You
did.
just talk to them, you issue a citation. If they don't
They
comply,
never
it
issued a
goes.
citation before May of 2017 for a code enforcement violation.
Okay. I didn't know that.
None. The only option was
See, I didn't
criminal.
know that.
Now we have administrative citations. We created an ordinance. I wrote it
So,
with the county council, and we got the board to adopt it. And so we write administrative citations. That means we collect the fines, not through the court system.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Since you do it very well, I thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry you're so late for our talk. But if I was to build a building and you walk by and you were watching the building, you knew I didn't have it, you put such a thing as a red tag on it,
The
correct?
building inspector would, not code enforcement.
Seriously.
Seriously. I cannot open Pandora's box on proactive enforcement in this county with 5 officers.
So if you walk by, but that observation you made with how many sound board signs were out, and knowing full well that they've never approved the sound board sign, you saw no violations because you're not allowed to see them until somebody
No,
says.
I didn't say we didn't see them. I'm saying we're not going to take enforcement action in a
Not gonna
proactive manner.
act, they're complaint-based,
Complaint driven.
which is
So you
why
have no
the
complaint
coastal
about
zone
a
is,
sign that you know to be illegal.
the
You
coastal
don't
commission is
activate.
complaint-based too.
You don't start, I'm just stumped. So it has to be an unpopular person. or cause some sort of a problem. I don't understand, if you know that that is a violation, even though you're not net.
Well, wait a minute. If it's a building, we see somebody, and we
Well,
know
he says
it's,
it's not that.
and we know, but if it's A-frame signs,
Yes,
we don't have, guys, we don't have enough people to run around and pick up A-frame signs.
If they were making money for you, you would.
I'm telling you, this is a problem.
Excuse me.
This is it, wait, no, I wanna speak here. You are asking for a proactive program. This is not, I wanna end this discussion. with trying- Go to the board meeting in June 4th, and there's gonna be public comment about the budget. If you want another code enforcement officer just to work the town of Mendocino, or just to work three towns on the coast to do A-frame signs, but he doesn't have the staff, we don't have the firepower to be running around on A-frame signs.
can I finish?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So basically, it's to comply or to be fined. If someone calls me in on it, I have a soundboard sign, it's to be comply or either bring it in or you get a fine, right?
You get a notice.
You get a notice.
A formal notice.
citation.
Right. It's either, and it says to either comply or you get a fine.
If you don't comply with
I
it,
don't
30
comply.
days.
So that concept of it was missing for a day or two, what does that matter? I didn't comply. You come back after 31 days and it's still there. The idea that maybe it was gone, it's gone every night, guys. They bring it in at night, otherwise vandals take them. So I don't understand why that, you give me 30 days to take it in or I get a fine. So we'll work on that.
Let me comment, please.
Yes, please.
I get what you're saying, you're not understanding what I'm saying. If I issue you notice of violation for your
Right.
sandwich board sign,
Right.
and you take it in, and 2 months later you put it back out, I'm not talking immediately. That would be not very smart for you to do that, because then you wouldn't be compliant with the notice. But 2 months later you do it, I gotta issue you another notice of violation. So that's what's happened in Mendocino. I talked to Angie about this. She'd go sweep this town, and they'd pick them all up, and they'd be gone for a period of time. And then all of a sudden, they'd show all back up again.
Does she have the right to take them up? They're on
No.
public property.
No.
They're on.
You have to give them the opportunity to retrieve them.
They're private.
But they gave the
That would be
opportunity to
stealing.
retrieve them, and yet 31 days later, they're back again, or they're still there. You don't know which. So you observe that.
That would be theft.
I have no right to put
We're
something
talking
out.
about, so there is an issue with encroachments.
Yes.
There's an issue with the zoning code. Those are
Safety.
two different things.
All of those things.
I got you. I didn't realize that was gonna be.
So
aggressive.
if the sandwich board's on private property, then it's outside of your domain, or is that
It's still
code
an
and zoning?
MHRB. In order to put a sign up in the Mendocino Historic District, you need approval of the board. Clear.
But not inside the building, in the window.
Unless it's lit.
Unless it's lit, yeah.
And then, but
Unless
you
it's
made
illuminated.
comment about a lit sign was difficult to do or something like this?
No, I didn't say that.
I think
he said,
I said,
I think some of your business people are wondering why you guys are worried about it.
yeah, that was told when I talked to him.
Why members of
Oh,
the
because
community
most,
and
yeah,
Okay.
I love the people in this town, but yes, when they're violating the law, they realize that everybody else does it.
Okay.
This is, no, truthfully, this is what is happening. You have, the reason you had no signs on your agenda last month, the month before, is because of this. It's common knowledge, you can put it out, and it doesn't count. It's common knowledge, it is exactly right, go ask those very same people. Nobody cares, it's okay. And so that's what he's dealing with. And I think that if that situation stays that way,
I think I think what I've learned tonight is that, thank you very much for here, but
Yeah.
the fact is, this is Carmel and Board of Supervisors' problem. These guys are just doing what they can with resources that they have available to them. I mean, right? So, your report.
My report, okay, first up.
Thank you very much.
I think it was Mr. Hawk. Was it Mr. Hawk?
yes.
Harold Hawk said something I had to respond to, that PBS man, he said something to the effect, maybe I'm saying it wrong, management is moving resources and funds away from the town of Mendocino. I in no way am moving any funds away from you. Actually, I'm tracking my time, I've spent a lot of time on your stuff, and she spends way too much time on your stuff. And so does Julia, and so does Jesse, and so does a whole bunch of people. I have never, since I've been here in 8 months, seen us moving resources away, and I don't like the comments from Mr. Hawk. It almost makes it sound like I'm maliciously trying to hurt the town of Mendocino. I am not.
With due respect in his absence, let me just defend him. I'm pretty sure he was talking about the county as a whole,
Yeah, but-
not your department is taking
But I
money.
just-
I
I
think
just
the
want you
department as
to
a
know
whole is
that
sucking
There's
money away.
planners, they care about historic preservation. I mean, my gosh, you guys, everybody brings their relatives when they come out of town to the town of Mendocino. We love it. Everybody loves coming here. But I don't know, I just couldn't, it just, that irritates me. So anyway, but also on that point, if you want more resources, June 4th and 5th, I think, or 3rd and 4th is the budget meetings. You should go to those meetings. So next one is, minutes are the key, that the former supervisor, he's wrong. Minutes are not the key. We're gonna do the minutes. Juliana's gonna work with our admin staff and Jesse, and I want to give them, I just told them, it's action minutes. This recording, anybody can come get, it's just action on each item. What did they do?
Yeah.
Give it to our admin staff. It's gonna be simple, and they even showed me a software program. I want you to get a new laptop that's here, that you can just do it right here and send it into the system. So, anyway, when you do the action, the appeal period starts the next day. The only thing is a coastal development permit, we have to, once it's approved, we have to send it, we have to do the notice of final action. It doesn't start the 11-day clock with them until they have that act, remember, I blew up.
That's
on
a
that.
special permit.
Yeah, but your minutes are not the key to, but I agree with you, you gotta have minutes. It's in our ordinance, we have to do minutes. That's why I agreed with everybody and said, we're gonna do minutes. We gotta get those minutes back. So when you get them, you'll see them, it'll just be action items. And then the,
Motion and approve, yeas and nays.
yeah, it'll just say motion approved, on the, like the issue with the, given the awards, it'll show the awards they gave out.
John Schmidt's project.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. And I'm supposed to talk to you, Lee.
Can I ask a question about that though?
No, it's not open for comment. Okay. Okay, can I keep going, Chair? The next one on the Anderson one, no, I just wanted to, did you get, Lee Edmondson handed out some correspondence?
No.
Did you get that?
Nope.
Between whom and who?
He asked me if there was correspondence and he sent something in.
Oh, this, was that, I didn't know.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure.
Oh, yes.
He has,
I gave out more copies.
you might wanna look at that, so for the next agenda, we can talk about some of those things.
Right.
You'll be shocked, I have an opinion on some of them. And, some are positive, some are negative.
Yeah, I see some of them made it into the agenda.
What's that?
Some of them like comments.
Now it comes back to him, Brett.
Anyway, I'm not supposed to talk to you, Lee. Okay, and then, let's see, what's the next one? Why no multiple applications? We're not, we're not getting a lot of use permit applications. Julie and I were talking about that. Like, I don't know if it's the economy's slowing down or what's happening, but I'm not getting a lot of items for you. We're not getting a lot of major, like the planning commission is asking, hey, why haven't we had meetings? And it was, I'm getting a bunch of zoning administrator and coastal permit administrator items. I've had a whole bunch of them so far. But everybody else, I don't know why I'm getting them, and I want you guys to get more stuff on the planning commission. So,
do you remember the fees from, no, because you're new.
I know the fees, but we're gonna, wait a minute, I want to talk about that.
Just for future, these two items of what the fees were and what they are now.
Yeah.
So just look at the percentage rate.
And I wanted to talk about the fees too, just so you know what you're up against. Because this is something, when I got
They
here.
went from $290 to $1,000.
Yeah, well, this was in 2018, they hadn't changed the fees in 8 or 9 years. It's because the recession hit, the board didn't want to up the fees, and then they upped them in 2018, and it was a shock, because a lot of people across the
But they
county.
tripled or quadrupled them.
Yeah, well, they studied, Nash was here
So then now people can't afford to do as much.
and they studied the fees, and they applied how many hours is it taking us to get those tasks done. This is a common, the Nexus, studies you do. Every city does it, every county does it, and we got them adopted in 2018. I just went to the board on April 23rd and got the fees adopted for cannabis. They were all upped. And and planning building fees were approved at the same time. So those all fees are in place. I forget how much they went up, but I can get those for you.
No, I understand there's a lot of people going underground now because of the cannabis, but that's all.
Yeah.
Can I just ask two questions?
Yes, sir.
One is, did you say that the planning commission's applications have dropped also?
Our dropped way, our first big meeting is gonna be May 16th, and we've got like 6 items on there, mainly a bunch of towers.
Okay, can I ask my second question? Did they have an increase in fees too? When we did?
Well, their fees were changed back in 2018.
When ours were?
When ours were.
Yeah.
They were tripled. Well, there you go. Everybody.
This is
can't
pattern
afford it
recognition.
anymore. We used to have
Come on.
6 or 8 applications.
There's all kinds of reasons why.
No, we used to have 6 or 8 applications every month. Because the fees were, look at the thing, they were $290 and they went to $1,000 for a minor use.
Well,
that's a huge jump.
I don't agree with you. Let me keep going.
Okay.
The next one, I want to talk about the budget. What you're up against on the cost for our operation. It's $6.8 million a year. We're bringing in about 4.8 million. It's $2 million a year. I am never going to propose right now to drop any fees until I'm assured we're covering the time that it's taken to do so. One of the things that's causing, I will admit that maybe causing more time, we have a staff here in the county that's brand new. Except for Julia and Juliana, most everybody's been here for a year or 2. So when you have a lot of turnover in your staff, things are not gonna get done fast. And the ordinances we have here are not the easiest to do. I mean, not that you can't figure it out, but it takes you a while. It takes you a couple of years, 2-3 years, till your planners and everybody go, oh, okay, yeah, Town of Mendocino's got this, I gotta go through this process. It takes them some time for us to show them where the format staff report is, how the noticing goes out, when the staff reports have to queue up into the system so they can be approved to go. It's not, I wish it was a really simple process. It's not.
I'm sorry, but I got stuck back when you said we're not gonna reduce the fees. I thought we had already talked about signs, if there's less.
I'm not
work.
going to right now.
You're not going to, okay,
I'm
there you
not
go,
going
for the
to,
record.
I'm not gonna propose fees be reduced. I just got them approved.
If you have the authority to reduce fees, that's for supervisors.
I can propose them to be lowered.
But he's not
But he's not gonna propose it.
No.
He's not gonna.
Because
He's not
after
gonna.
because
not
after I
gonna.
studied all the time.
All right, I got stuck there,
For
but
my
yeah,
first 8
okay, I
months
got
of
it.
being here, when I studied the time it's taking, we're spending more time. So until I can get the staff to actually lower the time it takes to get projects through the process, I'm not gonna propose to lower the fees. We're being subsidized, they call it net county cost, $2.5 million.
How much net taxes the county gets? The county's getting $2 million a year in net tax, just from Mendocino.
And again,
That's $2 million, that should cover,
And again, I would,
it's being spent in
if
Ukiah.
I could speak to, I thought this was director's report.
Yeah.
Or if you want to get,
Go ahead.
I'd be happy to
No,
discuss about
Keep
it
going,
later.
never mind.
The fees, so anyway, the fees went April 23rd, the budget goes on the 4th and 5th. If you want to discuss with the board, you should go. You should tell Ted what your desires are. The next thing is on Macs, maybe you want to talk to Ted about setting up a Mac. Again, if you want to know the policy and how you do it is right on the website.
So we've already made the model, we made the model 8 years ago with David Colfax as supervisor.
Okay.
So anyway, and then, let's see, one thing I wanted to bring up with repainting, we did have an example here. I just want to show it to you, just so you don't think the staff is doing nothing. But they do, this was, somebody came in with the color that their building was and the shade they're gonna put it in. It's almost exactly the same shade. So we already are doing that. She's already, I confirmed that with signed copies, as long as the signed copy is the same, she's,
Sign color.
no, the signed copy, not the color of the building. You're approving that ministerially at the counter.
When the colors haven't changed, they keep coming.
No, not the color of the building, on signed copy.
When a sign color remains the same,
Same.
but the copy changes, we approve that across the counter without a fee.
Without a fee. So because there was some confusion here, like we're charging them, we're not. So, and then lastly, I really think we gotta keep communicating. I think there's a communication problem. I think there's multiple voices. I think it's back to this thing I think people get certain things. I'm not saying you're wrong, Ed or Lee, but there's lots of discussions going around, and I don't think any of us get a chance to really sit down and go, what's really happening? There's a bunch of different voices, and to me, it's just confusion. And we never can quite get to the issue. I'm committed to communicating with all of you. I am running back-to-back meetings, but I will try to return the call as quick as I can. Best if I give you my cell phone. I always have it with me if there's an emergency or something. Or Julia or Juliana for right now. Please help me find a manager for the coastal office. I think that we can all work together to train and help with this board and everything on the coast. I think that will make our process better. So again, I'm open to looking at the fees. I'm not saying I'll never look at the fees. It's just from right now, when I look at the time it's taken them to get something done and what our overhead costs are to keep them,
I just feel like this entire meeting we've been talking about reducing the time. We made the signs a consent item.
Consent
We're
was
reducing
good.
it up. We don't need the
Consent
fat packet
was
on the
never
whole.
gonna save you any money.
Well, we didn't know that.
It
But
wasn't gonna-
if
it's
we
just
don't
gonna
need
be-
the whole packet of the whole building on where there's been an existing sign.
Dan's gonna come over, and we're gonna sit down with Dan, and we're
Okay.
gonna look at the
All
staff
right.
reports.
Okay.
And guys.
Because we want to see more applications. I know at least 3 businesses that want signs. And they'd be happy to pay their $290, but they can't pay the $680
And believe me, there'll be nothing more.
plus the
I'd
sign.
love to announce to the board, I wanna come forward, because we've reduced our, we've done an efficiency over here in the coast.
Yeah, that'd be
It'd be
great.
great if it was you or one of these coastal development permits, because they are expensive.
Can we get it,
Yeah.
I know that particular fee structure was, when it first came out, I think there's been some modifications with that. Can we get a copy of what the current fees are?
The current fees are posted on the website.
They are? On which website?
Planning and Building Services website.
Oh, so all the current fees for minor use. Is a sign, what's the sign considered? Minor use? Or what is a sign considered?
MHRB, it is the lesser fee of the 3
Minor.
fees. It's a minor.
Okay.
There's 3, okay.
Ed?
Yeah, just one thing of the action minutes, the one thing they have to show is in order to have a standing in an appeal, you have to have been at the meeting or wrote something in to disagree with the thing. In other words, you can't just sit quietly. So whenever you're doing action minutes and someone says, I object to this building, it should always show in the thing as to who did it and why. But the other thing is that, I'm sorry I got up and I'm sorry I yelled, but every time we talked about fees, you kept on making it sound like there was something in the Board of Supervisors. And then to find out that you had said that these fines were needed and they were justified after all that. I object. I do believe that you heard us talk about how much money we send to the county and we don't get it back. We pay for those. They should be free, except for the building costs that are the same as every place else. But our signs, they're not that expensive in other places. They're free in other parts of the county. And our paints, there should be no charge for those. We already
$50
paid.
in Point Arena for a sign application.
I think it's 75
$50.
in Fort Bragg.
And I'm not saying it should be $50, but I'm saying it should be
Lee.
$290.
Lee Edmondson for the record, I have a quick question. MHRB funding a line item in the budget?
Is MHRB a line item?
Funding, is the MHRB funding a line item in the budget?
I don't think we have anything in there. It's just staffing costs, or if there was a need to amend one of your ordinances, we budget a line item to potentially have the staff get some help from a consultant to rewrite an ordinance. That's when you would show up.
Renting this room and staff time to attend MHRB meetings is
I
not a
don't-
line item.
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. See? You see?
I know, he's very seductive.
It's why I never finished. It's why I never finished junior high school and I never finished high school.
What's that?
It's why I never finished junior high school and I never finished high school.
Okay. Now you made me forget what I was going to
All
say.
right, okay, can we get back to this, because we'd like.
Line item funded.
I have to get up really in a second.
I don't think, after going through the budget this time, I don't think there is anything in there. It's just, basically, here's all the staffing we need for the year. And here's my net county cost. It's $2 million for planning and building. And when they added cannabis to it, it made my net county cost go to $2.4 million.